Chapter 240, Screw This. Third bite, I'm gonna take it. Filled with determination, Fatty used 100% power. A roaring filled his head, teeth grinding hard onto the pill as if sparks would fly. The pill's incredible elasticity pushed back. The feeling was impossible, causing Fatty to tremble. His face drained of blood, sweat pouring down. Gritting his teeth against pain, he called out, "See how I keep my word. Ha ha ha, I'm even sweating to add illusion. Okay, fourth bite, kid. After this, I can't hold back." Onlookers picked up clues about what was really happening. Strange looks appeared on their faces. The Golden Frost disciples especially looked strange. They knew Li Fugui well. Eternal Mountain's eyes narrowed. He frowned and began to mutter to himself. Everyone could see the determination filling Fatty's eyes. He was obviously going all out. He switched the medicinal pill to the other side of his mouth and bit down viciously. "Your granny, there's no way I can't bite it to pieces." A cracking sound rang out as Fatty's teeth pierced deep into the pill. However, as soon as they did, a foul, fishy, incredibly spicy fluid sprayed out from the hole that had been punched into the pill. Fatty's face suddenly went pale white. His body began to tremble, and his eyes went wide and filled with veins of blood. Tears began to stream out of his eyes, and a roaring filled his mind. It seemed as if his soul were about to fly out of his body. The feeling in his mouth was impossible to describe. You, body trembling, face pale, he involuntarily leaped back and was just about to spit the pill out when he realized that everyone was looking at him. He quickly closed his mouth shut tight, refusing to spit the pill out. The situation didn't seem to be very complicated, but to Fatty, it seemed as if he were in a living nightmare. Sweat poured off of his body. He could handle foul odors. He could handle fishy flavors, but what he hated more than anything else was spicy food. His mouth felt as if it were on fire, and it seemed about to drive him insane. Meng Hao felt even more guilty. He had learned of Fatty's hatred of spicy food back in the Reliance sect. Fatty had accidentally revealed the matter to him personally. During the pill concoction process just now, he had intentionally added some medicinal plants which would create spiciness. The pill was an amalgamation that included the meat jelly skin powder, which was virtually indestructible. However, Meng Hao was worried that Fatty's teeth would exceed his own powers of prediction, and had therefore included a backup contingency: spiciness. Fatty's face was bright red as he glared at Meng Hao. His tongue was numb and his head was buzzing. "I still have one bite left. You just wait, this time I'll crush the pill to pieces." Everything was quiet. Surrounding cultivators looked on strangely. Lin Heilong's eyes went wide, and Zehai gaped, then shook his head with a wry smile. Fatty was about to go all out for his final fifth bite. Meng Hao couldn't hold back. "It's even more spicy the deeper you go," he blurted. Fatty heard this like a bolt from the blue. A tremor ran through him. He seemed too frightened to bite and might give up. People who'd been repulsed now felt bad. "What do you want?" said Fatty. He looked about to cry. Meng Hao sighed. He really felt guilty. "Screw this." Fatty opened his mouth to spit out the pill, but it was stuck on his tooth, which had punctured it but not bitten through. Fatty quickly plucked the pill off of his tooth and tossed it back to Meng Hao. Eyes glowing with hatred, he retreated back to his place among the Golden Frost sect disciples. Currently, his lips and tongue were completely numb. The words he had spoken just now had been a bit slurred, and his face was bright red. Sweat continued to pour off of him, and the roaring sound continued to fill his head. Tears streamed down his face, and he felt as if his mouth might begin to emit flames at any moment. Everything was quiet. Who could possibly have imagined or predicted that Li Fugui would hate spicy things so much? Cultivators are not mortals, and should be able to prevent such things from affecting them. Fatty's reaction was therefore a testimony to the pill itself. What sinister spiciness does that pill contain to be so effective? So that medicinal pill was actually vastly more powerful than a poison pill. That pill was so bizarre. Everyone's attention was completely focused on the medicinal pill in Meng Hao's hand. 2 lines of teeth marks could be seen on either side, and in one spot was a tiny hole where Fatty's tooth had punctured the pill. It was no longer round but flat. Whichever way you looked at it, though, the pill had not been crushed into pieces. Soon all eyes moved from the pill to Meng Hao's face. The East Pill Division, the Violet Qi Division, and the Golden Frost sect were all looking at Meng Hao. There were a variety of expressions: looks of confusion, wry smiles, glares of envy. Everyone who knew him suddenly decided that in the future they should be very cautious about consuming pills he had concocted. Meng Hao was used to being stared at. His expression was the same as ever, but his heart began to beat faster. He put his pill away, then looked at Lin Heilong and Zhehai, who was still shaking his head and laughing. Grandmaster Eternal Mountain's archaic voice broke the silence. "Kid, would you mind giving me that pill to examine for a moment?" Meng Hao hesitated, then shyly asked, Elder, didn't I just win?" With his pale skin and scholarly appearance, he really looked like a defenseless young animal. It was the kind of look that made people instantly sympathetic. Meng Hao's question actually didn't sound like a question. Were it anyone other than him who responded in such a way, Eternal Mountain might take offense. Seeing Meng Hao's expression caused Fatty's hair to stand on end. His eyes went wide and he stared. His tongue was still numb, his vision was still blurry with tears, but seeing what was happening now caused a face to appear in his mind. The expression on this master alchemist's face and his words were exactly like what he remembered from the pill cultivation workshop outlet back in the Reliance sect. 1. Meng Hao started the pill cultivation workshop outlet in Chapter 11. Fatty joined the operation in Chapter 18. He's. The more closely he looked, the more confused he got. This was especially so as he thought to how Meng Hao had disappeared without a trace a few years before. No matter what inquiries Fatty made, he hadn't been able to turn up a single clue. But Fatty just couldn't believe that Meng Hao would have left the southern domain. "Don't tell me, damn it, if that's really him. Only Meng Hao knows that I hate spicy food." Fatty's eyes went wide and he began to breathe heavily. He felt even more wronged now. If this person was Meng Hao, then he would definitely figure out some way to get revenge on him. If it was Meng Hao, though, he obviously wouldn't. Grandmaster Eternal Mountain smiled as he looked at Meng Hao. Inwardly, he smiled. He felt as if he were looking at himself all those years ago. He didn't care whether or not spiciness had been added into the medicinal pill. The fact that Li Fugui couldn't crush the pill in 4 bites was testament to its strength and resilience. "It appears I've lost the wager," said Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, smiling. With that, he flicked his sleeve, and the pill bottle with the ancient medicinal pill flew over to Lin Heilong. "Kid, are you going to give me that pill to have a look at?" "I'm afraid not," replied Meng Hao, his expression no longer bashful. Without the express approval of the senior generation of the East Pill Division, Junior doesn't dare to allow others to appraise the pill. Meng Hao couldn't possibly hand the pill over. As soon as Grandmaster Eternal Mountain got his hands on it, he would definitely be able to detect the meat jelly skin powder. Then, Meng Hao's position would be compromised, which would lead to all sorts of trouble. Eternal Mountain stared in shock at Meng Hao's reply. It had been many years since he had requested to appraise a pill. Never before had any master alchemist refused. Considering his status, each and every one would hand over the pill eagerly. One word from him could cause the name of an alchemist to spread throughout the southern domain. Meng Hao's response caused Lin Heilong's face to soften a bit. He smiled at Meng Hao and nodded slightly. "What's your name?" he asked. "Disciple Feng Mu," Meng Hao replied with a start. "What I said just now was no joke," he said with a smile. "Feng Mu, from this day forward, you are a Furnace Lord. I will send people for you shortly to complete the Furnace Lord branding process." With that, he looked over at Eternal Mountain. "What now, Grandmaster Eternal Mountain?" Eternal Mountain gave Meng Hao a long, deep look, then smiled and rose to his feet, shaking his head. "I've lost," he said, "but I have no regrets. With a kid like this, the East Pill Division could last forever. However, first there was elder brother Liu, then me. Who knows when the third person to forsake the sect will appear?" He gave Meng Hao a final smile, then turned and left. The rest of the Golden Frost sect followed him. Tang Shiking gave Wu Dinkyu a smiling bow, then left with his disciples. Before leaving, Fatty turned back with a pitiful expression to look at Meng Hao. Seeing his wronged expression, Meng Hao felt extremely guilty. He also realized that Fatty most likely knew his true identity. Chapter 241, Violet Chi from the East. Outside the Violet Fate sect, several 300-meter-long airships shot through the sky. On one of them, Dharma Protector Tang Shiking stood with Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, looking off into the distance. Tang Shiking hesitated, then finally spoke the question gnawing at his heart. "Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, are you really going to give them that ancient entrancement pill so easily?" Eternal Mountain was silent for a moment, then gave a faint smile. "The entrancement pill is defective. I studied it thoroughly long ago. Besides, do you really think the East Pill Division lacks an entrancement pill?" Tang Shiking's eyes glittered. After a moment he nodded. "Besides," continued Eternal Mountain, "my purpose for visiting the Violet Fate sect has been accomplished. A trifling entrancement pill was well worth it. His eyes shone with a strange light. Oh, Tang Shiking said, surprised. He still didn't quite understand. But Grandmaster Pill Demon didn't show his face. Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, how exactly did you accomplish your purpose? Whoever said I went to the Violet Fate Sect to pay respects to Master, he replied, his voice archaic and filled with wisdom. Master would never agree to see me. My medicinal pill was just an excuse. The true purpose was to get a look at Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, Eternal Mountain laughed. Anyone who had cultivated the Tao of alchemy to the realm he had would of course possess extreme powers of insight. Tang Shiking stared in astonishment. Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, he was about to continue speaking but stopped. His pupils constricted and suddenly his eyes filled with disbelief. He looked over at Eternal Mountain. Don't tell me. Grandmaster Pill Cauldron is none other than that young man, said Eternal Mountain in a voice that could chop nails and sever iron. The words hit Tang Shiking like a thunderbolt. He immediately began to breathe heavily. He had no reason to doubt anything Grandmaster Eternal Mountain said. However, Grandmaster Pill Cauldron's identity was too shocking to believe. And Zay obviously knows, said Eternal Mountain. His perception must have come from Master. As for Elder Brother Lin, his Tao of alchemy hasn't progressed in hundreds of years. He'll never become a Grandmaster and couldn't perceive Fang Mu's skill, especially his ambiguous final method. Fang Mu is clearly brilliant. The boy is young, yet he is Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. Tang Shiking took a deep breath, a strange light filling his eyes. For now he can't claim the Grandmaster title, but he's a truly rare seed. If you spread word of his identity, don't forget that a Tao of Alchemy Grandmaster is also a Poison Grandmaster. Wiping out an entire sect would be as easy as blowing dust off a table. He became famous for his bedevilment pill and its mad, devilish will. Though I didn't see the pill, the images in the Jade slip made my hair stand on end. His calm words stabbed like ice into Tang Shiking's heart. He obviously doesn't want to reveal his identity, continued Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, so you would do best not to cause problems. What I am most interested in knowing is, will he become the third Forsaker? He smiled. His words were a question, but in his eyes he seemed to already know the answer. Far off in the southern domain, near the rebirth cave, lay the corpse that had fallen from the sky years before. Several dozen cultivators shot toward it at top speed. All wore black clothing. Their auras were sinister and cold, as if they could turn hot summer air into the frostiness of the yellow springs of the underworld. Their cultivation bases were unstable, sometimes foundation establishment, sometimes core formation, sometimes nascent soul, occasionally even spirit severing. The Immortal's corpse had stirred the hearts of southern domain sects for years. The 5 great sects and 3 great clans hadn't given up their investigations. Activity had diminished, but all sects had reaped benefits. Now the corpse was accessible. Soon it would cause a greater stir in the southern domain, drawing vast numbers of cultivators. These people were merely probing. The cultivators approaching the corpse were bizarre. Black smoke filled the air, as if their bodies contained 2 souls. They weren't alive but puppets housing discarnate souls. They moved quickly, nearly upon the corpse. The smoke twisted and warped into a sickle of black mist, cutting directly toward its neck. Days after the Golden Frost sect left the Violet Fate sect, the corpse emitted a massive roar, surpassing the first. It swept across the entire southern domain like a gale. The dozens of cultivators nearing the corpse coughed blood, their bodies becoming indistinct as they tumbled backward. A voice sounded in their minds. "Screw off." The words echoed to the heavens. Half of them screamed as their bodies exploded. Blood and flesh scattered everywhere. Discarnate souls emerged but disintegrated before fleeing. The 10 or so survivors immediately fled at top speed. However, before they could get very far, their bodies began to tremble, as if they couldn't control the discarnate souls within their bodies. These people were of course from the Black Civ sect. Even as they left, a new piece of news began to spread around the southern domain. A mark of blood had appeared on the neck of the Immortal's corpse. It looked as if someone had tried to cut off its head, but had only succeeded in leaving behind the mark. As soon as this news reached the various sects, large amounts of cultivators emerged and headed toward the rebirth cave. They didn't dare to approach too closely, but observed from a distance. The news stirred all 5 great sects and 3 great clans. News of the roar reached the East Pill Division, but they were far away. Moreover, Fang Mu had just been promoted to Furnace Lord, so the sect paid little attention to it. Furnace Lord promotions were grand occasions. second only to Violet Furnace Lord promotions. However, the unorthodox nature of Meng Hao's promotion led to a muted reception. Still, Meng Hao was busy for several days. He received a new Immortal's Cave and robe. Though some disparaged the promotion method, he got the position's perks. His Immortal's Cave was an entire valley deep within the East Pill division, far from the master alchemists. Neither large nor small, it belonged to him alone. His robe was black interlaced with violet and had a special function, magical short-range teleportation within 50 kilometers. After 3 uses, he could exchange it for a new one. Pill furnaces like his blood crane would be provided by the sect as needed. Before, acquiring high-value medicinal pills required trading for medicinal plants. Now the sect provided them free. He could also buy expensive, rare medicinal plants on credit. Most importantly, as a furnace lord, he could enter the Violet Fate Celestial Land once per month. 1. The Violet Fate Celestial Land was introduced in Chapter 213. The benefits were numerous and difficult to enumerate. His status now towered over master alchemists, heaven to earth. 1,000 master alchemists existed, but only 100 furnace lords. Meng Hao could now look down on all inner sect disciples, and conclave disciples of the Violet Qi division treated furnace lords with utmost respect. While conclave disciples could request pill concocting from furnace lords, usually only sect elders did. In the southern domain, any sect attached extreme importance to Violet Fate sect furnace lords, far beyond their regard for master alchemists. Becoming a furnace lord was like becoming a conclave disciple of the East Pill division. However, it required approval from all other furnace lords. Meng Hao's sudden promotion caused them to regard him with disfavor. Meng Hao didn't care. Immediately after promotion, he borrowed a copy of Violet Qi from the East, something he'd long awaited. Upon finishing it, he entered secluded meditation. 2 months later, he emerged with 6 Tao pillars, now violet instead of gold. Finally, relief. No one could now see traces of the Sublime Spirit Scripture on his cultivation base. He now practiced not from the Sublime Spirit Scripture's Qi Condensation Manual, but from its Foundation Establishment Manual. Violet Qi from the East. Though the manual was incomplete, Meng Hao possessed the complete Qi condensation version, and thus understood the technique better than the Violet Qi division's cultivators. His Tao pillars now emanated threatening Violet Qi. His pupils glinted violet, and his aura was entirely different. Violet Qi from the East suited Meng Hao perfectly, as if prepared for him. By practicing it, he would form a violet core. A violet core would be the foundation for the perfect core. Before meditation, he spread word of planning to reach foundation establishment. Upon emerging, his early foundation establishment base perfectly explained his violet pupils. This chapter was sponsored by Lenny Ran, David Hao, Rai-Zin Wang, Colin Ding, Jai-Shin Chen, and Robert Zhang. Chapter 242. Alchemy Tao Transmutation Incantation. Violet Qi from the East. A faint violet aura flickered in his eyes. He lifted his right hand, fingers glowing violet. This technique matches the Qi Condensation Manual, not magic but cultivation. The Violet Fate sect created divine abilities from Violet Qi from the East. He closed his eyes momentarily, reopening them. In his mind, text from the manual floated before him. He'd memorized 2 passages describing techniques for furnace lords. Violet Pupil Transformation and Violet Qi Guillotine. He gazed at his outstretched fingers. Suddenly, he waved his hand and violet smoke drifted out, congealing into a crescent moon. With a thought, it crashed into the cave wall. The cave and entire peak shook, a massive curved impression appearing on the wall. That was only 10% power. Thoughtfulness filled his eyes. After time passed, the violet glow in his pupils flickered, then spread to cover them completely. Lines of violet streaked onto the skin surrounding his eyes, veins that had turned from blue to bright violet. He looked like an evil spirit now, a suppressive aura rolling off him. His expression unchanged, he lifted his right hand and cut his left arm with his fingernail. The wound opened but began healing as blood welled up. In moments, it vanished. He wiped away the remaining blood. No mark remained on his skin. He sat quietly for the time of half an incense stick. Then his body returned to normal. Violet Pupil Transformation. What an amazing art. It doesn't increase battle prowess, but my recovery is far beyond normal. Mastering both techniques fully would require more practice. Other restricted Violet Qi division techniques could only be practiced by conclave disciples. The East Pill division held a high place in the Violet Fate sect, but their restricted techniques were impossible to access. Unless he became a Violet Furnace Lord. That rank transcended the East Pill division. It was the Violet Fate Sect's pinnacle. They could read all ancient records without restriction. After all, only one sect in the southern domain had Violet Furnace Lords, so they received special treatment. Meng Hao took a deep breath. Setting aside the magical techniques, he sank into thought. With superior Furnace Lord resources, he began concocting pills, not just for himself but to acquire more ingredients and formulas, ensuring his alchemy skill continued growing. Time passed. Half a year went by. Meng Hao spent it in seclusion, absorbed in cultivation and pill concocting. Each month he visited the celestial land, acquiring medicinal plants. He concocted pills at 3 batches per day for inner sect disciples, now at higher prices. Still, his pills remained popular. He had collected most medicinal plants needed for the perfect core pill, now missing only a few. For his own pills at 80% strength or higher, he didn't sell them but branded them with the cauldron seal and stored them. Each cauldron mark conjured visions of vast spirit stones. He was passionate about it. Gazing at his collection of cauldron-marked pills, he imagined the spirit stones he'd gain if he sold them. Only Meng Hao knew how many pills he'd concocted during the half-year. He immersed himself completely in alchemy. The time combined with the East Pill Division's deep knowledge caused his Tao of alchemy to grow significantly. He could now easily extract 60% medicinal strength, and even concocted several at 80%. As a Furnace Lord with access to precious medicinal plants, he was unlike other alchemists. Most importantly, after becoming Furnace Lord, he acquired the second-level catalysis technique, not for catalyzing plants but a pill concocting method. The Alchemy Tao Transmutation Incantation. It refined pills he'd previously concocted. Meng Hao immediately loved it. After testing it several times, he became proficient. His natural talent for plants combined with the Alchemy Tao Transmutation Incantation, advancing him by leaps and bounds. This technique transmuted ordinary pills into more powerful ones. It was one of the East Pill Division's most advanced methods. It was also why Furnace Lords vastly surpassed master alchemists and received warm welcomes throughout the southern domain. Beyond the Alchemy Tao Transmutation Incantation, he learned a few dozen methods for plant and vegetation interactions that obscured his concocting techniques. This was what Meng Hao needed. Combined with his natural talent, he could blend all methods into the simplest yet most difficult approach for intermingling ingredients. Simple, yet adding extra ingredients made it both simple and complex. The basic skill wasn't difficult, but achieving complex results required more ingredients. Different pills needed careful work to prevent interactions from affecting their basic function, little room for error. Imperfect execution could hide mistakes entirely. For Meng Hao, this was the best technique to conceal his secrets. His plant and vegetation skill was firmly in the third realm of 10 million variations. Meng Hao was very happy in those days. Both his cultivation base and alchemy skill grew steadily. His 7th Tao pillar was now more than half formed. He calculated he'd need at least 10 years as Furnace Lord, improving his alchemy and mastering the Alchemy Tao Transmutation technique. By becoming Violet Furnace Lord, his cultivation base would reach Foundation Establishment's Great Circle with 9 Tao pillars. Then, core formation. Chu Yuyan never sought him out. When he ventured out, he heard she was obsessed with finding the mysterious Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, trying daily to determine his identity. Hearing this, a strange look crossed his face. In 5 years, he'd grown used to his new identity. Having finished concocting a pill batch, Meng Hao rubbed his nose and walked out. It was midday, the sun burning hot. A slight breeze blew hot wind across his face. He looked out at his valley. Over the half-year, he'd planted many medicinal plant varieties. The heat wave caused them to emit a faint medicinal aroma filling the valley. In such an environment, it was no wonder alchemists always smelled of medicinal pills. He walked down and began tending medicinal plants. As Furnace Lord, he could summon apprentice and master alchemists. However, he liked quiet and hadn't called for help. As for Bai Yunlai, he treated Meng Hao with ultimate respect whenever they met. Meng Hao had considered asking him to live in the valley, but the man would never rest and would be out of sorts. Nothing could be done. Worse, while no outsiders knew of Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, Bai Yunlai did. His eyes filled with fervent ardor and respect whenever he saw Meng Hao. Meng Hao could only laugh bitterly at this. Tending his garden, his expression suddenly flickered. 2 apprentice alchemists, each about 30, hurried in. Upon seeing him, respect filled their eyes. Clasping hands, they bowed. "Greetings, Grandmaster Fang." Meng Hao plucked withered leaves from a plant. After his last Furnace Lord lecture on plants, he calculated it was time for another. "Time for another lecture?" he asked indifferently. This was a Furnace Lord responsibility. They were masters to master alchemists and patriarchs to apprentices, ensuring the junior generation advanced. These two had been assigned to Meng Hao as servants. "Grandmaster Fang, it was 2 days ago. You didn't come out and we didn't want to disturb you." He nodded. Finishing the plants, he followed them out of the valley. Walking through the East Pill division, every apprentice alchemist was extremely respectful. They saw his black robe interlaced with violet trim and immediately knew his rank. Only about 100 Furnace Lords existed in the entire Violet Fate sect, versus over 100,000 East Pill division disciples. 100 people couldn't remember 100,000, but 100,000 could remember 100 very easily. Everyone recognized Meng Hao immediately. This was Fang Mu, Furnace Lord for half a year, promoted unorthodoxly or not. His black and violet robe announced his status. In the East Pill division, he lacked supreme power but possessed incredible prestige. Even master alchemists treated him with utmost respect. Salutes followed him the entire way. Chapter 243. I dare you to say that again. One valley in the East Pill division was called Alchemy Day Valley. 20,000 people sat in a semicircle around a high platform. This was one of 3 locations for Furnace Lord alchemy lectures. As an apprentice alchemist, Meng Hao often attended to hear them speak about pills and plants. The benefits were significant. In addition to these 3, 10 other valleys hosted master alchemist lectures. This made the East Pill division feel like an institute of higher learning rather than a sect. 13 valleys held lectures from master alchemists or Furnace Lords, not out of requirement but choice. The content of each lecturer's discourse was always different. East Pill division cultivators could choose which lectures to attend. Some lectures attracted hundreds or thousands, others were packed. Furnace Lord lectures were usually more popular than master alchemist ones and extremely crowded. Except Meng Hao's first lecture as Furnace Lord had only a few thousand attendees, hardly packed. He hadn't cared, speaking 4 hours before leaving. Accompanied by the 2 apprentices, he arrived at Alchemy Day Valley. He hadn't minded the sparse attendance, but now he was shocked at how many had gathered. He could see apprentice and master alchemists sitting everywhere, gazing up at a white-haired old man who emanated transcendent aura. The old man was a very senior Furnace Lord. He spoke in a cool voice ringing in all directions. Everyone heard clearly. Some eyes glowed, apparently in enlightenment. Meng Hao's lecture slot was days earlier, but he'd been delayed by pill concocting. He'd have to wait for this senior Furnace Lord to finish. As Furnace Lord, he didn't wait outside. As he entered, nearby apprentices noticed and stood to salute respectfully. He smiled and nodded, they parted, and he walked down feeling embarrassed. Soon everyone in the valley saw him, even distant attendees. They all stood to salute. His entrance caused a small commotion. The old man frowned, stopped, and eyed him with displeasure. "Alchemist Fang, you're unaware of the rules," he said coolly, voice ringing throughout the valley. "I'm lecturing. Why are you here? This ruckus is ruining my mood." Meng Hao glanced at the old man, slightly frowning. He knew the other Furnace Lords weren't happy with him. Normally, he wouldn't let such words slide, but his presence had caused a commotion and interrupted the lecture. "Forgive my inconsiderateness," he said with a slight smile, then sat to the side. He might as well wait. The old man snorted coldly and ignored Meng Hao, continuing the lecture. Time passed slowly. The old Furnace Lord droned on, occasionally holding up medicinal plants to analyze. Apprentices listened thoughtfully, many showing signs of enlightenment. Meng Hao, however, grew drowsy, apparently alone in this. Pill concocting fatigue and the old man's wordiness contributed. Generally, 1 sentence sufficed for Meng Hao to grasp the point, but the man added 10 more sentences. Moreover, Meng Hao was already familiar with the plant and vegetation variations being discussed. Among Furnace Lords regarding this knowledge, if Meng Hao was second, there was no first. Whatever reasons Meng Hao had for boredom, the man was lecturing on alchemy. Though long-winded, Meng Hao wouldn't undermine him. Do not do to others what you wouldn't wish done to you. After time passed, he couldn't help but yawn. Not far from the platform, the old man noticed and was clearly displeased. His mood sank lower. Seeing Meng Hao's indolence, he suddenly grew angry. He stopped and looked at Meng Hao, eyes burning, words ear-piercing. "Furnace Lord Fang Mu, you doubt my lecture." Immediately the apprentices' entranced looks vanished. They looked excitedly toward Meng Hao. Those faces had been habit-driven, some genuine but mostly fake. Silence reigned, thoughts swirling. Two Furnace Lords arguing. I've never seen this. Furnace Lord Zhou talks too much. If he's unhappy, he flips out. We have to pretend interest or face consequences. That's the rising newcomer. The Violet Qi Division Inner Sect disciples love Furnace Lord Fang. Furnace Lord Zhou is highly qualified. Who wins? Meng Hao frowned, looking at old man Zhou. I doubt nothing you've said, Furnace Lord Zhou, he replied coolly. I'm exhausted from pill concocting and need rest. Seeing Meng Hao back down twice caused contempt to flicker in Zhou's eyes. Lies, you're being disrespectful on purpose. Explain your doubts in detail. If you can't, leave immediately. I'm fed up with your resting here. A cold glow appeared in Meng Hao's eyes. He'd backed down twice. Interrupting the lecture was improper, but the man was overboard. Though Meng Hao had a good temper, his cold eyes revealed his displeasure. Originally, I didn't want to cause embarrassment over the Black Furnace Lord's robe you wear. Meng Hao's voice turned sharp. But since you insist, I'll express a few doubts. Instantly, the apprentices perked up. Something interesting was coming. Master Alchemist's eyes glowed genuinely, far more than before. Zhou harumphed coldly, about to speak when Meng Hao interrupted without courtesy. Your understanding requires embracing all plant and vegetation variations, then crafting a thorough plan before concocting pills. This is dog crap. Fang Mu, you've got nerve, the man roared, glaring furiously. Say it again. Meng Hao's reply was calm yet menacing. What pills would you concoct that way? The Tao of alchemy comes from heaven and requires personal enlightenment. Success comes only after defeat and improvement, the result of concoction itself. Concocting requires identifying truth from falsehood, selecting proper time and location, adjusting flame and modifying plant interactions. Was I wrong saying your words are dog crap? You want me again? As your senior requested, I will. Your words are a load of dog crap. The words blew over Zhou, his body trembling with anger. He pointed at Meng Hao ferociously. Treason, heresy, he shrieked. Rules govern medicinal pills, ignorant child. Your finagled Furnace Lord promotion humiliates us all. We're ashamed to associate with you. You don't know rule or pill formula. Formulas are rules. I refer to pill concocting that follows formulas. Pill formulas are merely simplified recordings of concoction, Meng Hao replied calmly. They're references for alchemists, like a roadmap or light in darkness. You! Meng Hao's words grew more relentless. Following a formula, you concoct a pill, but that makes you a mere master alchemist. Do you deserve the Furnace Lord title? You're just a boring pill-concocting puppet. Why you? Formulas are rules, you. The old man sputtered, about to explain when Meng Hao interrupted. You can't speak clearly. Formulas are rules. Examine all heavenly pills. How many have multiple handed-down formulas? Some have 100 formulas with different interactions, each producing the same pill. You speak of rules. Are multiple different rules for each pill your claim? Very well, assuming there really are rules, then after the first pill formula appeared, who was it that created the second pill formula? What about the third? Or the fourth? By the time you reach the 100th pill formula, can you explain who exactly created that pill? Meng Hao's indignant words filled the entire valley. All of the apprentice alchemists who were listening had looks of excitement on their faces, as well as the glow of enlightenment. The master alchemists were panting as they pondered Meng Hao's words. The looks on their faces were much similar to the looks on their faces as they had been listening to Zhou's lecture just now. However, the difference between the words of the two different Furnace Lords was incredible. Zhou's fury rose to the heavens. His entire body shook as he howled. Treason, heresy, rebellion against the Tao of alchemy. Do you dare to proclaim that the creator of the next pill formula, the 101st, isn't among the East Pill Division disciples present today? Hearing this caused a wave of excitement to pass through the apprentice alchemists. Ignoring old man Zhou, they immediately spoke out their agreement. Meng Hao's words crashed like thunder into Zhou's ears. He walked back steps, staring with bloodshot eyes. This chapter was sponsored by Caleb Gleason. Chapter 244, Debate in the Alchemy Valley. Can you say anything but treason, heresy, and rebellion against the Tao of alchemy? Meng Hao sat cross-legged, calm as a spring breeze. His expression unchanged, he smiled. But his words were incredibly sharp. Apprentices watched in admiration. Zhou burned with rage, his mind reeling. His words grew venomous. You ignorant youth, you don't know what concocting pills means. Get the hell out and go back to suck your mother's teat. Wait until. His words made Meng Hao's smile disappear. His cold eyes grew icy. You don't deserve to say concoct pills. Pills are concocted. Concocting requires intelligence. That's why it's called concocting. Your Tao is copying. Concocting pills and copying pills differ by one word, but your Tao reached its road's end years ago. Lies, lies, Zhou howled, hair in disarray, glaring. His own words seemed sharp, but Fang Mu's were diabolical. Taking a deep breath, he counterattacked. How could you blaspheme the Tao of alchemy's rules passed down tens of thousands of years? Without respect, you concoct abominations, not pills. Abominations, Meng Hao smiled coldly, stretching his right hand. Apprentice alchemists, does anyone have a medicinal pill? Give it to me. Immediately, a clever apprentice produced a pill and handed it to him. Everyone watched. Meng Hao took the pill, glanced at it, and looked back at Zhou. This is a 20% qi condensation pill. There are 97 formulas for it. Now I'll show you what rules are. The first requires 3 blood cinnabar grass leaves, blue residual root, gerfalcon leaf vein. The second requires the third. Without stopping, he recited all 97 formulas. East Pill Division disciples, including master alchemists, recorded his words. When finished, deathly silence fell. All his recited formulas were correct. Each concocted a qi condensation pill. The 98th requires 3 eastern dust flower pistils, 3 spicewood seedlings, a flaming Luan phoenix leaf. The 99th needs east path sap, 3-year, 7-month, 9-day-old ink leaf. The 103rd. The 117th. Everything was silent. Zhou stared in mute astonishment. All apprentices and master alchemists stared blankly, as if he weren't human. No one had heard the final 20 formulas. His thoughtful face showed he'd created them after seeing the pill, not recalled them. These actions far surpassed his previous words. After reciting 117 formulas, 10 breaths of silence followed. Then everyone erupted. He created formulas. What realm is this? No wonder he's a furnace lord. Astonishing. He created 20, not 1. I listened carefully, 90% confident they all concoct qi condensation pills. That's instantaneous formula scrying. Only violet furnace lords with incredible Tao of alchemy skill can do that. Zhou's face was pale, breathing ragged, expression lifeless as he stared at Meng Hao. His mind roared with thunder. Am I mistaken? Is my Tao flawed? Impossible. If I were, how could I be a furnace lord? But if I'm not, why hasn't my skill improved in 60 years? I just created 20 formulas. By furnace lord Zhou's logic, I Fang Mu am the rule maker. Meng Hao flicked his sleeve, sending the pill back to the apprentice. The apprentice clutched it excitedly, a keepsake for life. Meng Hao's words slammed like thunder into Zhou. His face drained, body trembling, eyes filled with blood veins. Stop ravings. You contradict the East Pill Division's Tao. You sow seeds of doubt. Such actions deserve execution. My unfamiliarity with those formulas only proves I don't know where you got them. You're putting on a show. This old man was tenaciously annoying. A cold smile spread on Meng Hao's face. Oh, just a show. Furnace Lord Zhou, what medicinal plant were you just holding? Medicinal plant? Furious, Zhou stared blankly. He slapped his bag to produce the plant he'd lectured about. This is 7-leaf clove. He began talking when Meng Hao laughed loudly. 7-leaf clove thrives on light with opposing yin and yang properties. It grows only at evening when sun and moon shine together. At dusk it glows 7 colors. It looks like confusion apex leaf and blue dawn leaf. Stems, leaves, branches tell them apart. Sky conditions help too. His gaze was icy. The plant you're holding is not 7-leaf clove but blue dawn leaf. His words sent the valley into uproar. Apprentices looked at Zhou, whose face tightened instantly. Misidentifying a plant meant incredible loss of face. Worse, if Furnace Lord Zhou had misidentified one, it would destroy his reputation. Dusk is falling, said Meng Hao, voice like steel. Soon the sun and moon will shine together. If your plant is truly 7-leaf clove, it will glow 7 colors, proving me wrong. Then I'll humbly apologize in front of all sect disciples and never place myself in your presence. He flicked his sleeve. The debate had long passed the lecture's end time. Dusk was falling, moon becoming visible. The debate had gone long, but apprentices and master alchemists could barely contain enthusiasm, virtually entranced. Nonsense, fumed Zhou. I'm 137, how old are you? How could I misidentify? Huh. Before finishing, dusk arrived. Sun and moon both shone in the sky. But as the dusk light fell on his plant, no 7-colored glow appeared. Meng Hao said nothing. Conversation buzzed through the apprentices. That's not 7-leaf clove. Furnace Lord Joe pulled out the wrong plant. If he can't produce the right plant, who'd listen to him about the Tao? Joe's face paled. Shame made him want to hide, but fury rose as he stared at Meng Hao. He still had fight. You ignorant youth spouting nonsense. I became Furnace Lord 60 years ago. You became Furnace Lord 60 years ago, and in 60 more you'll still be one. Perhaps I'm ignorant and young, but I'm a Furnace Lord like you. In 60 years you'll prostrate before me. Your Tao is flawed. Meng Hao stood. Without looking at Joe, he walked out. Meng Hao's words reverberated like thunder. He raised his hand to point, but tremors ran through him and he coughed blood. Flawed, flawed. His mind echoed with those words, forgetting even to respond. As Meng Hao left, tens of thousands of apprentices' eyes glowed. They watched, certain his name would shake the East Pill Division and his future lectures would be explosively popular. Unfortunately, the ways of the world are impossible to fathom. Meng Hao's comfort in the Violet Fate sect would soon end. A month after the debate, Meng Hao sat in his immortal's cave, finished with a pill batch and fantasizing about accumulating vast spirit stones using sect resources. Then a command Jade slip arrived. Based on all Furnace Lords' recommendations, he was to leave for experience. All new Furnace Lords had to leave temporarily for experience, a flexible rule. Alchemists prefer seclusion and dislike travel. However, the Black Civ sect had offered vast compensation for 2 Furnace Lords, one for alchemy lectures, one for special pills, common among great sects and clans. Even Li Tao, not a Furnace Lord, was invited a month before by the Li clan. They'd purchased his foundation establishment day. Meng Hao was recommended for his unorthodox promotion. Many waited for him to fail. Pills for great sects weren't ordinary, each required full Furnace Lord skill. Having bypassed some promotion requirements, he had no way to refuse. The Black Civ sect, his brow furrowed. Chapter 245, Back to the Black Civ sect. Meng Hao didn't want to go, but the Jade slip was issued and he had no good reason to refuse. Moreover, he owed the sect many medicinal pills. His debts were in official records. He didn't need to pay immediately, but eventually would. If not, his medicinal plant access would be restricted. This trip served multiple purposes, gaining experience and reducing debt. For Fang Mu, a trip to the Black Civ sect is a great opportunity. Determination glittered in his eyes. Having decided, the image of elder sister Su appeared in his mind. He also thought of Han Bei and Zhou Jai, and all events connected to the Black Civ sect that year. 1. Han Bei is the beautiful, conniving conclave disciple from chapter 192. Zhou Jai is the Tao child whose life Meng Hao spared in Book 2, chapter 204. This time, I'll travel the southern domain as a Violet Fate sect Furnace Lord. Chuckling, he flicked his sleeve to gather items. Jade slip in hand, he left his immortal's cave. Several days later. Grandmaster Zhou, Grandmaster Fang, a black civ fruit from our sect, delicious as fine wine given only to sect elders. A massive black airship shot through the air at top speed, crewed by several hundred Black Civ sect disciples, Foundation establishment stage cultivators. One core formation disciple, the alchemy protector guarding the Violet Fate sect visitors, sat with them, smiling while concealing thoughtfulness. In front of him sat a white-haired old man in black and purple robes, emanating transcendence. Beside him was a handsome, fair-skinned young man. The old man's expression was indifferent, austere. Late Foundation establishment, Furnace Lord Zhou, whom Meng Hao had debated a month ago. The young man beside him emanated medicinal plant scent, looking more scholar than cultivator. This was Meng Hao. The Black Civ sect also sent a man over 30 in bluish-black robes, abundant in profundity and knowledge, sitting silently off to the side. When Meng Hao first saw him days ago, shock filled his heart. This was Zhou Jai, the Black Civ sect's Tao child. The same person Meng Hao had battled years ago at Foundation Establishment's peak. Zhou Jai lost that battle. His open, upright actions earned Meng Hao's respect, and he spared him. 2. Meng Hao and Zhou Jai's battle began in chapter 202. Meng Hao hadn't seen him 5 years. Now something about him seemed different. Meng Hao couldn't tell what, but felt a bizarre sensation. Such thoughts swirled but weren't revealed. After the core formation cultivator's words, Meng Hao considered responding when old man Zhou reached for a black civ fruit. Extraordinary fruit, he said coolly. Best as a medicinal ingredient. I won't waste it eating. He glanced at Meng Hao. Meng Hao didn't respond. He smiled, accepted the fruit, and placed it in his bag. Inwardly, he sighed. How could he have imagined the Violet Fate sect would send him with Zhou? Zhou lectured on alchemy. Meng Hao handled pill concocting. Throughout the airship journey, Zhou had given Meng Hao only dirty looks. The Black Civ sect had noticed. The core formation cultivator smiled widely but had doubts. This furnace lord Jodekun is famous, deeply qualified, a top furnace lord whose frequent visits show Violet Fate sect's respect. But this Fang Mu, he finagled his way to furnace lord half a year ago, just a master alchemist. Of course, he never showed his disdain for Fang Mu, treating Zhou with higher respect. 3. Jodekun is Chinese letter. Zhou, common surname. De morals or virtue. Kun, an 8 trigram representing earth. He laughed loudly. If you'd like, Grandmaster Zhou, I can ask the sect leader for more black civ fruits for you both. Off to the side, Zhou Jai sat taciturnly, silent the entire time. Like Meng Hao, uninterested in conversation. Old man Zhou seemed pleased handling all formalities. The four sat, only two conversing cheerfully. Old man Zhou seemed proud. This time I'll show this pup how formidable I am. Time passed. The airship traveled quickly through several teleportation portals. Days later, the 100,000 mountains appeared. Meng Hao had spent most time in secluded meditation. No one dared interrupt. Black Civ disciples gave utmost respect. Zhou was opposite. Bombastic discussions with the core formation cultivator, flagrantly displaying his profound Tao of alchemy understanding. Meng Hao didn't mind or care about Zhou's loathing. Despite it, Zhou didn't ridicule him like before. The debate had left him fearful. This was Meng Hao's first appearance as an alchemist before outsiders. Seeing others, respect for his position reassured him he joined the Violet Fate sect rightly. If they learned he was actually Meng Hao, killing intent would billow to the heavens. Hearing stories about himself, he sighed inwardly. Now I'm truly part of the southern domain. 5 years ago I was an outsider. Standing at the airship's bow, lost in thought, he stared at the Black Civ sect slowly growing closer. The 100,000 mountains stretched endlessly. Black smoke from the gigantic incense burner rose skyward. The Black Civ sect seemed filled with mysterious, incredible power. The disciples' faces emanated bone-deep pride, birthed by endless mountains and smoke rising to heaven. Zhou and the core formation cultivator strolled up chatting. When Zhou saw Meng Hao, he snorted. Fellow sect members shouldn't overtly reveal ill feelings to outsiders. So he snorted, said nothing, and joined Meng Hao looking out. This was Meng Hao's first time helping the Black Civ sect, but circumstances were vastly different. As the airship approached, bells filled the air. 6 peals rang out, attracting hundreds of thousands. None knew what happened, but soon inquiry spread the news. The Black Civ sect had invited Violet Fate sect furnace lords. Soon, Meng Hao saw dozens of light beams and hundreds of conclave disciples emerge. Among them was Han Bei. She looked strangely at Meng Hao. He'd inquired about elder sister Su and learned she was now a conclave disciple, but she wasn't in this group. Laughter rang out, followed by a clear, powerful voice. Core formation cultivators led, and one was Nascent Soul. Greetings Grandmaster Zhou and Grandmaster Fang. Welcome to the Black Civ sect. The Nascent Soul cultivator was no stranger to Meng Hao, Patriarch Violet Civ. 4. Patriarch Violet Civ led the Ultimate Vexation mission, last appearing in Chapter 166. He was the one who'd spoken. When enemies meet, eyes turn red and killing intent explodes. Instead, Patriarch Violet Civ smiled. He showed no arrogance from his nascent soul base, only utmost respect for the alchemists. Meng Hao's expression was solemn. He stepped forward respectfully. Old man Zhou did the same. Together, they clasped hands and greeted him. For the Black Civ sect to dispatch a nascent soul cultivator was extreme honor. As Violet Fate sect representatives, they couldn't breach etiquette. Grandmaster Zhou, Patriarch Violet Civ said, you rank among the highest furnace lords. Your rise to Violet Furnace Lord is surely near. Your presence adds glitter to our humble abode. He laughed, smiling at Zhou, then turned to Meng Hao. Grandmaster Fang, you're the youngest Furnace Lord. Your fame spreads throughout the southern domain, and I've heard your name long. Seeing you, I'm assured you're a hero amongst commoners. Patriarch Violet Civ's words were well spoken. Though he inwardly cared more about Zhou, he showed no disregard for Meng Hao. The surrounding core formation cultivators clasped hands and saluted both. None showed arrogance, only utmost courtesy. After pleasantries, a core formation cultivator introduced the conclave disciples. Meng Hao smiled, nodding to each. My respects, Grandmaster Zhou, Grandmaster Fang. Greetings, Grandmaster Zhou, Grandmaster Fang. Normally, conclave disciples were lofty before outsiders. Today, respect filled their expressions. Furnace Lord fame was enough to awe anyone. Grandmaster was honorary, neither was a true Grandmaster. Zhou smiled at them. His age required only a nod, but when he noticed Meng Hao doing the same, irritation arose. When Han Bei was introduced, Meng Hao smiled at her. He hadn't seen her 5 years. She was more beautiful, curvaceous figure, alluring face, rainbows would lose color near her. Uniquely gorgeous. Han Bei extends greetings to Grandmaster Zhou and Grandmaster Fang. Her soft, velvety voice said, seeming to make hearts itch. Meng Hao smiled and nodded, about to move to the next person when suddenly the demon-sealing Jade spoke in his mind. It had been long. Discarnate souls possess the body, returning from the afterlife a quickening. Demons under heaven's vault shall be incinerated, ashes fly. Seal them, and the 7th-month sun shall be concealed. Help them, and the demon sealer's blood confuse with its will. This chapter was sponsored by Caleb Gleason. The word I'm translating as curvaceous is kind of cool in Chinese. The characters are very visual. Chinese letter, Chinese letter. Chapter 246, World Pill Division. Fellow Taoist Han, Meng Hao said suddenly, looking her up and down, you look familiar. Have we met? Presumptuous words, but part of his plan. All Black Civ sect conclave disciples looked at them. Core formation experts glanced over, eyes sparkling. Patriarch Violet Civ's interest was piqued. Zhou was astonished. Han Bei's eyes focused on Meng Hao. Grandmaster Fang, forgive me, I don't remember. She looked thoughtful, something flickering deep in her eyes. Meng Hao was sure she was hiding something. Had he not experienced her craftiness in the blessed land, he wouldn't have detected it. My mistake, he laughed. Perhaps I wished I'd met you before. The conclave disciples all smiled. Core formation experts smiled, shaking their heads. Their age had made them abandon the pursuit of beautiful women. Zhou frowned. Such behavior was embarrassing for the sect. Patriarch Violet Civ laughed. Grandmaster Fang, you youngsters will have time to know each other. For now, follow me into the sect. Embarrassed, Meng Hao clasped hands and bowed. I've embarrassed myself, senior. Han Bei covered her mouth and blinked. Meng Hao and Zhou entered, surrounded by Black Civ sect members. Suddenly, Patriarch Violet Civ's expression flickered. He looked off into the distance. Everyone stopped and followed. Patriarch Violet Civ chuckled. Grandmasters Li and Chen from the Golden Frost sect's World Pill Division arrived half a day early. He waved his arm, and bells tolled 6 more times. Meng Hao looked into the distance and soon saw a massive airship approaching fast. People flew off the deck. 2 wore long crimson robes with pill furnace embroidery, looking powerful, emanating medicinal aroma. HMPH, Zhou Dekun snorted. The Black Civ sect also invited Grandmaster Eternal Mountain's World Pill Division. Meng Hao looked at the 2 middle-aged master alchemists from Eternal Mountain's World Pill Division. They smiled as they approached. Meng Hao asked Zhou Dekun, when other sects invite alchemists, do disciples of other Tao of Alchemy Grandmasters always show up? Sometimes, but not often, Zhou Dekun replied. He wanted to ignore Meng Hao, but they were fellow sect members outside. With World Pill Division people present, friction regarding the Tao was inevitable. To keep the following days stable, Zhou Dekun added, the Black Civ sect wants to improve their Tao of Alchemy, so they invited the World Pill Division. He frowned. As he finished, Patriarch Violet Civ and others politely surrounded the World Pill Division alchemists to lead them in. Almost immediately, one scarlet-robed World Pill Division alchemist, tall, sturdy, powerful, extraordinary, spoke. Fellow Taoist Zhou is here. I remember his mighty words years ago about becoming Violet Furnace Lord. 60 years passed, fellow Taoist. Did you achieve it? His gaze fell like lightning on Zhou and Meng Hao. So it's fellow Taoist Li, said Zhou Dekun with a snort. The man's words had touched directly on a painful matter in his heart, and he couldn't help but snidely remark, I haven't seen you for years, and yet somehow your breath has gotten worse. The second of the 2 alchemists was somewhat skinny and had a mustache shaped like the character Chinese letter. He looked at Meng Hao and gave a false smile. This must be Grandmaster Fang Mu, the East Pill Division alchemist who people say finagled his way to becoming a Furnace Lord. Haha, sir, I've been looking forward to meeting the famous Brother Fang for some time. Your name resounds like thunder in the ears of those who cultivate the Tao of Alchemy. They say you're a master alchemist who wears the clothing of a Furnace Lord. The instant these two alchemists from Eternal Mountain's World Pill Division appeared, they spoke words filled with ill intentions. Their diametrical opposition to the East Pill Division alchemists was obvious. The people from the Black Civ sect seemed to take all of this in stride. The Tao of Alchemy of the East Pill Division was the most recognized throughout the Southern Domain, and their reputation was the most illustrious. The World Pill Division had been created by Grandmaster Eternal Mountain of the Golden Frost sect. Although Eternal Mountain showed respect for Grandmaster Pill Demon, his disciples and followers grew more aggressive by the day. They refused to acknowledge the glory of the East Pill Division, and whenever the two sides met, regardless of the occasion, sparks would fly. Meng Hao looked at Chen with a furrowed brow. "Who are you?" "I'm Chen Jiaxi, Scarlet-robed World Pill Division Master Alchemist." He smiled broadly, his heart filled with envy over Meng Hao's Furnace Lord status. He believed his Tao of Alchemy skill would make him high among Furnace Lords if he were in the East Pill Division, just not Violet. Many in the World Pill Division thought similarly. The division's alchemists were famous but didn't receive the East Pill Division's acknowledgement, slightly lower, fueling their disdain. "You've heard of me?" Meng Hao asked, sounding astonished. His expression seemed normal, but Zhou Decan knew his vicious capabilities and his heart thumped. Meng Hao's words weren't retreat. Chen Jiaxi laughed at his stunned expression, scorn filling his eyes. How could any Tao of Alchemy cultivator not hear of Alchemist Fang's rise to Furnace Lord? How does it feel wearing Furnace Lord clothing? Meng Hao laughed. "I get it. You know me because I'm a Violet Fate sect Furnace Lord. My words and deeds are known to all Tao of Alchemy cultivators, so my name thunders in your ears, but you're a scarlet-robed World Pill Division disciple I've never heard of. You must have come to meet me." "You?" Chen Jiaxi cried, his eyes exploding coldly. Such words were a direct insult. They said his reputation was unremarkable and that a finagled Furnace Lord's reputation thundered in his ears. Chen's anger was stoked and Li Yiming glared icily. How sharp-tongued. Patriarch Violet Civ cleared his throat and stepped between them, followed by core formation experts. With smiles, they led toward the 100,000 mountains. Arguing ceased immediately. In the Black Civ sect, both the East Pill Division and World Pill Division must give face. They were invited, and the sect wouldn't want violent conflict on entry. Zhou Decan glanced at Meng Hao. Though he had low opinion of him, he was secretly pleased. Meng Hao's words satisfied him. They flew to the 100 Mountains and a large temple beneath a green peak. The Black Civ sect had arranged a banquet for both divisions. Patriarch Violet Civ made no further appearances. His arrival to escort the alchemist showed the sect's respect. Most conclave disciples attended. Meng Hao saw Zhou Jai and Han Bei, but he didn't see elder sister Su, worrying him slightly, though he didn't show it. Zhou Decan conversed lively with crowds. Li and Chen, World Pill Division Master Alchemists, seemed comfortable and became centers of attention. 6 core formation cultivators attended, sitting together but courteously interacting. The Black Civ sect had gone all out welcoming both divisions. As night fell, the banquet ended. Meng Hao was escorted to Black Welcoming Mountains. A mountain peak held a luxurious residence surrounded by restrictive spells, making it extremely safe. As Violet Fate sect representative, the sect couldn't let harm come to him. A matter of face between great sects. Late at night, Meng Hao sat cross-legged, breathing deeply. After meditating, his body emanated white qi, dissolving the banquet's alcohol. Before consuming it, he'd examined it with his plants and vegetation skill. It was safe. Time passed, then his eyes opened, glowing brilliantly. Han Bei is incredibly intelligent. Maybe I shouldn't have addressed her openly. What is she hiding? He thought, but had no theories. I didn't see elder sister Su. How is she? What about Zhou Jai? Something seems very off. He seems different. His eyes flickered. What exactly did the demon sealing Jade mean? He closed his eyes and continued meditating. Chen Jiaxi's name in Chinese is Chinese letter. Shane Jia Zai. Chen is a common surname. Jia means good, splendid, and a variety of similar words. Zai means happiness. Chapter 247, Kill Me. Early the next morning, dawn's sun peeked out, sunlight falling on Black Welcoming Peak. The mountain was verdant and green, lacking singing birds and fragrant flowers, but Meng Hao's spirits lifted as he gazed from the second-story balcony at the lush surrounding mountains. The undulating mountains, covered in emerald green vegetation, were illuminated by brilliant sunlight. The glow fell upon his black robe, its violet aura growing stronger. It was hard to tell if the robe was black or violet. Mountain breeze lifted his long hair, as if he wished to float with the wind. As he stared into the distance, violet light gleamed in his eye. This was violet chi from the East's manifestation, which turned his 6 Tao pillars violet. After a moment, Meng Hao took a deep breath and left. Walking down the path through the black welcoming mountains, he encountered disciples who immediately saluted with clasped hands, faces filled with politeness, yet maintaining Black Civ sect pride. Word had spread on treating visitors. Meng Hao smiled, returning the salute, continuing on. He soon emerged from the black welcoming mountains into the 100 Mountains, a conclave disciple-restricted area. Looking at Black Civ disciples, buildings, and the enormous incense burner, Meng Hao sighed inwardly. Before joining the Violet Fate sect, he couldn't have imagined leisurely strolling here. Good, the meat jelly shed its skin long ago. If that happened now, my identity would be revealed immediately. Walking among buildings, he halted at a public square's edge. Dozens of disciples sat cross-legged there, Hanbei included. An old man was giving a sermon on Black Civ sect magical techniques. Meng Hao recognized him, a core formation cultivator who'd received him yesterday with Patriarch Violet Civ. The old man's voice rang coolly. Black Civ magic divides into the Black Underworld will and Civ of Heaven's teaching. Underworld represents 9 earth spirits. Civ represents 9 heavens will. Therefore, Underworld magic kills and Heaven's will is divine. Bear these sacred teachings in cultivation. Your path will lead to the heavens. He caught sight of Meng Hao. He nodded slightly, aware of who he was. He said nothing but looked at his audience. His gaze rested on Hanbei. He gave her a meaningful look, and she sighed inwardly, then rose and walked to Meng Hao. The old man continued discussing sect scriptures, his expression unchanged. He wouldn't let any outsider hear sect matters, but considering Meng Hao's status, it wasn't appropriate to drive him away. So he asked Hanbei to lead him. Hanbei didn't want to accept but had no way to refuse. Without showing her feelings, she arrived at his side. A beautiful smile blossomed. Grandmaster Fang, you're an early riser, accompany me, I'll show you the sect sights. She was beautiful as a flower, her voice soft and entrancing. Meng Hao knew it was inappropriate to stay for sect sermons. He nodded and said, being accompanied by such a stunning flower would be my honor. They strolled off. Some distance away, Hanbei smiled. Grandmaster Fang, you're truly refined and poetic. I don't deserve the flower reference. Her eyes sparkled, her flowing blue silk making her look like a flower. Hanbei was inherently beautiful, her smile dazzling. But to Meng Hao, she was a rose covered with poison thorns. He'd never forget how softly she'd said Zai, dear in the blessed land before ruthlessly killing him. 1. In chapter 163, Hanbei called Zai Jai dear before killing him. In response, Meng Hao laughed a bit but didn't reply. He just looked her up and down. Grandmaster Fang, don't tell me you're still thinking about wherever you wished you met me before. She laughed lightly, but Meng Hao saw anxiety deep in her eyes. She didn't think he could tell, but knowing her well, he noticed immediately. Meng Hao's mind spun. Hanbei wasn't the type to get nervous easily. He thought back to all their prior meetings. I've embarrassed myself in front of you, fellow Taoist Han, he said. I really am interested in you. He looked at her, letting interest glow in his eyes. When Hanbei saw this, her heart seized. From his entry, unease had overtaken her. Now it grew stronger, but her scheming skill was deep. She hid her feelings, keeping her brow smooth and face smiling. Continuing to stroll, she responded, Grandmaster Fang, I'm truly honored, but I don't understand. What about me interests you? She looked at him, blinking. The surname Han is special, Meng Hao said slowly, looking at the rising sun. Hearing this, Hanbei's expression didn't change. She smiled. How is it special? It's special because it's one of the 9 great families. His expression was normal, but his words made Hanbei frown and sigh. Meng Hao knew these were covers for her true reaction. His heart trembled, and more than ever he felt something fishy was happening. You're right, Hanbei said. My ancestors were among the 9 great families. They stopped outside a stretch of emerald green forest. Soft wind rustled leaves. Distant running water sounded. Nature's sounds merged into music. Surrounded by beauty, Meng Hao said nothing. He gazed at Hanbei and she looked back. After a moment he laughed, turning to look at the green forest. He strolled to a mountain stream running eastward. Looking down, fish flitted above smooth stream stones. Thoughtfulness appeared in his eyes. Something is unusual about Hanbei. Why is she nervous around me? It can't be about Fang Mu, and she doesn't know I'm Meng Hao, so it must be the East Pill Division. Hanbei stood next to him, expression unchanged. Time enough for an incense stick passed, then she suddenly slapped her bag. A glowing jade slip appeared. After glancing at it, she gave a slight curtsy. "This place is secluded, Grandmaster Fang. Stay if you wish. I have matters to attend and don't want to disturb you. This jade slip has a black civ sect map. Use it to enjoy scenery. I'll take my leave." She handed it over and turned to leave. As she did, Meng Hao casually said, "One of your friends in the East Pill Division wished me to pass greetings to you. As for that matter," meaningful words, yet ambiguous, any meaning could be drawn. Immediately Han Bei's heart pounded. Her back to Meng Hao, her eyes narrowed, but her posture betrayed nothing. She slowly turned her head, her face covered with surprise. "Grandmaster Fang, I don't understand," she said, blinking. Confusion filled her expression, as if trying to guess which friend he meant. Without such an expression, Meng Hao would have guessed, but this solidified his speculation. Something was definitely happening with Han Bei. He knew that without deep anxiety, she'd use such conversation to gather information. Instead, she showed surprise. He laughed. "I see. I clearly mistook you for someone else." He said nothing more. He wasn't sure what secret Hanbei kept that needed deliberation, but he also knew speaking too much could cause slip-ups, making her think she was being played, leading to complications. Hearing his words, Hanbei smiled vaguely. Saying nothing more, she gave another curtsy and turned to leave. Only when very far away did her face grow pale and tighten with anxiety. "East Pill Division," she murmured as she sped off. Meng Hao watched her disappear, his eyes glowing thoughtfully. Hanbei had acted strangely from his entry. She didn't want anyone noticing her nervousness, but Meng Hao had managed to charge directly into her deep secret. After much thought, though, he wasn't able to deduce what relationship Hanbei could possibly have with the East Pill Division. He looked down at the jade slip she had given him. He scanned it with spiritual sense, and a map of the various mountains of the Black Civ sect appeared in his mind. Some areas were marked with magical symbols indicating that they were prohibited. After a while, Meng Hao lifted his head and walked off. He strolled alone through the Black Civ sect until about midday. Off in the distance, he could see Black Welcoming Peak, and was just about to return when suddenly his eyes narrowed. He turned and looked off into the distance. In that exact instant, a shrill scream shattered the peace and quiet within the Black Civ sect. At the foot of a distant mountain, roaring could be heard. The ground trembled and a crazed cultivator flew forward, his hair whipping around his head. Kill me," he bellowed, his voice shaking the surrounding land. As he flew forward, multiple beams of light flew up into the air and shot toward him. Meng Hao stared with narrowed eyes, because he recognized this cultivator. It was none other than Black Civ Sect Dao Child Zhou Jai. This chapter was sponsored by staff: Amr Alid, Emil Olafsson, Rudolf Ariola, Adi Nagrahatewikal, Martin Hinnock, Rai Zin Wang. Chapter 248, The Origin of Time. The incoming figures flew fast, but Zhou Jai was faster, transforming into a light beam. He wasn't far from Meng Hao and grew closer. Meng Hao saw Zhou Jai's insanity and confusion. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with pain. He truly wished to die. "Kill me," he screamed. The other Black Civ sect people arrived, 5 core formation cultivators. Their hands flickered in incantation gestures, and the ground around Zhou Jai sank. A boom rippled out and he seemed suddenly suppressed. His face warped, frenzied agony reaching a pinnacle. A massive boom exploded from Zhou Jai's body, sending the 5 core formation cultivators tumbling backward, faces pale, blood spewing from mouths. Meng Hao's mind reeled, hard to believe. Zhou Jai was at Foundation Establishment's Great Circle, halfway to core formation. Yet his attack just now made 5 early core formation cultivators spit blood. Meng Hao gasped. Zhou Jai's cultivation base suddenly climbed. Explosive power emanated, his howls reaching heavens. The demon sealing Jade's voice rose in Meng Hao's mind, different from when he first saw Hanbei. Discarnate souls possess the body, returned from the afterlife, a quickening. Intentional or not, the soul is already harmed. A person suddenly appeared next to crazed Zhou Jai. He pressed a hand on his shoulder. Zhou Jai's body trembled, power dissipating. Insanity seeped from his eyes, confusion disappeared. Only strange pain remained. His body trembled. Pain in his eyes seemed immeasurable torment. This Dao child had earned Meng Hao's respect years ago. He seemed clear-headed now but uttered 2 words. "Kill me." Most people can't truly seek death. The will to live persists. Only those whose lives are a living hell truly seek death. After speaking, Jai lost consciousness. The figure was Patriarch Violet Civ. His expression dignified, he grabbed unconscious Jai to leave. Suddenly, he turned to look at Meng Hao. Grandmaster Fang, we've incurred your ridicule. This kid became addled practicing cultivation and went crazy. He sighed and shook his head. He carried Jai away, followed by the 5 core formation cultivators. Meng Hao stood silently. Everything had shaken him. The Dao child from 5 years ago and this Jai were completely different. What happened to cause such change? He began thinking about his battle with Jai that rainy night. Late morning arrived. Meng Hao headed back to Black Welcoming Peak and his residence. Sitting cross-legged, he reviewed what happened with Jai and the demon sealing Jade's words. Black Civ Sect's bizarre secrets seemed to grow. A long time passed, then he shook his head and put it aside. He slapped his bag to produce a pill furnace. Outside his sect, he maintained his daily pill concocting custom. He tapped the furnace. A roar sounded. He produced earthly fire crystals and prepared to concoct poison pills. As Furnace Lord, poison pills were what he concocted most. Plant and vegetation interactions could create powders or poison pills. Countless varieties existed, each with unique characteristics. Based on requirements, Meng Hao produced and catalyzed a medicinal plant. Currently, he held a treasure leaf flower, not poisonous. He catalyzed it until almost withered. Catalyzed this way and grafted onto another plant, he could create undetectable poison traces. Purple glow rose from his palm, catalysis power. The treasure leaf flower began to sway and grow. Suddenly, a tremor ran through him. His eyes went wide and shone. He breathed heavily, thoughts flashing like lightning. He'd had an idea. An idea related to Jai, Hanbei, and the East Pill Division. The idea flashed, great waves seething in his mind. Concentration broke, spiritual power grew unstable. The precious flower in his hand collapsed. Meng Hao didn't care. His breathing was agitated, eyes glittering. He stood up, forgetting pill concocting, focusing fully on the expanding idea. He muttered, with each statement his eyes glowed brighter. East Pill Division, Violet Will Incantation, Catalysis Power, causes plants to grow, speeds pill concocting. The Han Clan, one of the 9 great families. Hanbei, refining time, forging a time treasure, transforming time. By now his eyes shone as brightly as the sun. He suddenly lifted his head and gasped. The East Pill Division's Violet Will Incantation is the Han Clan's time-refining skill. He slapped his bag to retrieve the time-refining Jade page from the ancient Blessed Land. He'd studied this page before. It recorded how to refine time and forge the time treasure. He desperately desired such a treasure. But this was only one of 3 pages. The first remained in the Blessed Land's cauldron, and the meat jelly swallowed another. Meng Hao had the 3rd page containing time treasure information, but refining it required several hundred years of time power buildup. After learning this, he'd given up. It took too long, impossible that way. Time passed and nighttime came. Moonlight covered the land. Meng Hao took a deep breath and composed himself. His eyes glowed with unprecedented light. I should have thought of this earlier. Refining time, Violet Will Catalysis. They're essentially the same divine ability. They're both magical techniques from the same source. This 3rd page describes time sealing. 1 year of time locked in for every 10 years. 600 years locks in 60 years of time. So 10 60-year cycles could create a lesser time treasure. He slapped his bag to produce a spring and autumn tree. Perhaps the page the meat jelly swallowed, the 2nd page, or the 1st page in the Blessed Land's cauldron contains the East Pill Division's Violet Will Catalysis. To forge the time treasure, Violet Will Catalysis is absolutely necessary. He looked at the Jade page and tree, eyes shining. Only one way to find out. Without hesitation, violet glow appeared in his hand. Concentration filled his face as he employed full Violet Will incantation power and poured it into the spring and autumn tree. Time passed, 2 hours went by. Meng Hao frowned. The tree was like a black hole, relentlessly sucking in all catalyzing power. It had no apparent effect. He muttered and looked around. Finally, he let out a cold harumph and produced his Furnace Lord medallion. He pressed it, and a violet shield emerged, surrounding his residence. This medallion created a screening shield blocking even spiritual sense. Furnace Lords couldn't be spied on while concocting pills. The East Pill Division spent considerable resources developing this art. No one had ever broken it. Furnace Lords didn't always use it, but it lasted several hours, impenetrable during that time. Too much time passing meant spiritual sense could break through. With the shield in place, Meng Hao unrestricted his cultivation base. His 6 perfect Tao pillars unleashed full power. The shield glowed gently, protecting everything. The meat jelly's transformative powers dissipated. Meng Hao exploded with full cultivation base power. He couldn't sustain this long, so he went all out, employing peak violet will catalysis power. The spring and autumn tree slowly grew green. Suddenly, a bud appeared. Seeing it, Meng Hao's eyes filled with excitement. His cultivation base power instantly dissipated. He lifted his left hand and performed an incantation. Phantom images appeared, 10 seals, which he slapped onto the tree. These 10 sealing incantations were time-sealing magic. Beneath the sealing power, the tree trembled, then slowly returned to normal. But something was different. It seemed thicker and heavier, and deep inside was a touch of time's aura. It worked. His eyes glittered brightly. He put the tree away and dissipated the violet shield. Unfortunately, I can't employ full cultivation-based power conveniently. After leaving the Black Civ sect, I can test how many years of time I can add. He took a deep breath to calm his heart. He'd long thought about the time treasure, sighing over its hundreds of years of refinement. Now he had a method for creating it. He was confident it wouldn't take long to have a treasure with a full 60-year cycle of time. He didn't know exactly what powers such a treasure would have, but he keenly anticipated finding out. A treasure forged by the Han clan's divine ability or the East Pill Division's violet will incantation wouldn't disappoint. Chapter 249, Reconciled. This trip to the Black Civ sect wasn't for naught. Having put away the tree, Meng Hao smiled, but deep doubt flickered in his eyes. Hanbei has a deep East Pill Division connection. What secret is there? He thought, but put it aside. Early morning light filled the sky. Why did Jade go crazy? When I first saw him, something seemed off. Discarnate souls possessing the body returned from the afterlife. He sat lost in thought before looking outside. Shortly, he heard a respectful voice outside. Grandmaster Fang, the World Pill Division's Grandmaster Chen will lecture today. Attend. Meng Hao thought briefly. Curious about their Tao of alchemy understanding, he rose and joined the Black Civ sect disciple. They descended Black Welcoming Peak. The lecture was at the Black Civ sect's 57th mountain. Its peak had been shorn off to create a massive public square with rings of seats for tens of thousands. When Meng Hao arrived, more than 20,000 Black Civ sect cultivators were present. Qi condensation, foundation establishment, and core formation stages all seated around a raised dais. Chen Jiaxi and Li Yaming sat cross-legged atop the dais, meditating. Surprisingly, off in the distance were 3 tables. Behind one sat Patriarch Violet Civ. Next to him was a beautiful middle-aged woman, the one who'd taken elder sister Sue from the Reliance sect years ago. At the 3rd table was a ruddy-faced old man, his eyes flashing like lightning. His cultivation base was unfathomable, but he seemed slightly more powerful than Patriarch Violet Civ. 3 nascent soul cultivators made this alchemy lecture especially superb. Seated before the 3 tables was Jade, staring grimly at Chen Jiaxi and Li Yaming. Meng Hao strode over and sat next to him, his expression unchanged. Ignoring his previous distaste, Jade said, "These 2 are far too arrogant. They came to visit yesterday pretending to pay respects. Their words were filled with haughtiness. They believe the World Pill Division exceeds the East Pill Division." He seemed to hate them. Meng Hao was a fellow sect member. Friction had existed, but now outside, they had to stick together. Before he could finish his opening remarks, Jade continued ranting. The Black Civ sect invited 2 sects to train their alchemists. Instead of us lecturing first, they asked the World Pill Division. Outrageous. We must be careful, they clearly have ill intentions, they want to humiliate us. We'll lose face back at the sect. Jade clenched his jaw and stared at Chen and Li. I'm probably better off than you. You must be careful with pill concocting. Listen, if you have problems, find me immediately. I'll answer everything. I'll help you improve quickly. Meng Hao smiled. Friction had existed between them, but recent days made him realize no reason to be so irked. He shook his head, smiling. I don't think I'll make mistakes. You, AI, Fang Mu, we've had differences, big or small, it doesn't matter. The World Pill Division is provoking us. We represent the East Pill Division. He looked at Meng Hao. With a sigh, he slapped his bag to produce a jade slip. I prepared this last night. It's a collection of information from my 100 years cultivating the Tao of alchemy. All my knowledge and experience is here. Take a close look and we can corroborate and test together. It will help improve your Tao of alchemy. Meng Hao stared in shock. He accepted and scanned it with spiritual sense. He studied silently for a long moment. Finally, he looked back up. The information was genuine, all the experiences of a most senior Violet Fate sect furnace lord, incredibly valuable. After examining, Meng Hao knew he'd been rash. Any furnace lord deserved respect and could teach. Zhou Dekun's thinking was rigid, but his detailed Tao of alchemy understanding had reached the pinnacle. Attention to detail affected pill concoction success rates. Meng Hao might be more talented and profound, but his success rate was only 3 or 4 of 10 batches. From the Jade slip, Zhou Dekun's success rate was around 8 of 10. Many thanks, Grandmaster Zhou. Meng Hao's expression was serious as he clasped hands and bowed deeply. This Jade slip would help him significantly. No need, Zhou Dekun replied, clearly pleased. In his mind he thought, this kid might have finagled his Furnace Lord status, but he seems decent. When I return, I'll discuss with other Furnace Lords about improving his reputation. He cleared his throat and sighed, bringing up what puzzled him. For days I've thought about what you said in the valley. Some of it makes sense. But I'm sure that plant was a 7-leaf clove. I didn't think I could mistake it. But the leaves should glow with 7 colors at dusk. Meng Hao gave an embarrassed grin, coughed, and changed the subject. If Meng Hao seemed unwilling, Zhou Dekun wouldn't press. Given his Tao of alchemy skill, he had theories already. The relationship was being repaired and he didn't want further problems. They began discussing the Tao of alchemy, both benefiting. When the lecture started, they barely paid attention. As Chen and Li spoke from the dais, they glared at Meng Hao and Zhou Dekun, displeasure filling their words. Chen and Li laughed coldly at the disregard, but they couldn't say anything openly. Meng Hao and Zhou Dekun continued discussing, clearly benefiting. Zhou Dekun's eyes filled with admiration. Calmly stating their differences caused him to reach new enlightenment. Meng Hao realized his grasp of finer details was insufficient. After Zhou Dekun's advice, he made improvements. One old man, one youth discussing passionately. Eventually, Zhou Dekun slapped the table and gasped in admiration. The action seemed affected, causing Meng Hao to laugh. He decided to make a scene too, slamming his palm down and gasping. Chen and Li instantly exchanged a cold look, then cold smiles broke out. They decided to use this Black Civ visit to intimidate and shame the East Pill Division. Not through alchemy lectures, but pill concocting. Word would spread throughout the southern domain, and they'd rise to prominence. So they held their tongues. The 2-day lecture saw no one leave, but spectators gradually divided into 2 groups. More people clustered around Meng Hao and Zhou Dekun to listen, entranced, understanding most of the discussion. This pleased Zhou Dekun. Chen Jiaxi's eyes grew darker. Finally, he finished and glared coldly at them, his voice grim. You've talked for 2 days. Now it's the East Pill Division's turn. I'm interested in your Tao of alchemy understanding. Li Yiming's face was displeased. With a cold laugh, right, the East Pill Division holds the southern domain's pinnacle. What's so amazing about your understanding? Meng Hao frowned slightly. At first, he and Zhou Dekun had really been exchanging important knowledge about the Tao of alchemy. The majority of the time, though, they had mostly been putting on a show. As such, he had been able to listen to some of the World Pill Division's understanding of the Tao of alchemy. They had some truly unique perspectives, many of which seemed reasonable. Zhou Dekun gave a cold snort as he stood and headed up to the dais. As for him, he had also noticed some of the special areas from the World Pill Division's lecture. How could he not have picked up on some of the uniqueness of their understanding? As the assigned lecturer during this trip to the Black Civ sect, he would not shrink back. He felt as if his knowledge had been honed by his chat with Meng Hao. Now he would do anything to avoid making any slip-ups. Chen and Li left the dais, and Zhou Dekun stood there, his heart filled with determination. His current plan was to use his command of all the various explicit details to finagle his way through the first part of the lecture. In the great path of the Tao of alchemy, special attention must be focused on the variations of plants and vegetation, which must be committed to the heart. These things form ultimate truth. As such, the Tao of alchemy is eternal. Fellow Taoists, today, I, Zhou Dekun, shall elaborate upon the 3rd realm of the plant and vegetation variations. Zhou Dekun clearly wanted to drag things out as much as possible to give himself time to think. However, before he could continue, a cold laugh rang out from Chen Jiaxi. This is the first time I've heard of such a thing, he said. Grandmaster Zhou, you claim that the Tao of alchemy means to commit plants and vegetation to heart, which leads to ultimate truth. Therefore, I would like to ask you, what is this ultimate truth to which you refer? He slapped his palm down onto the table. The sound echoed out, bolstered by his cultivation base to form an overbearing aura. He stared at Zhou Dekun. Strange looks appeared on the faces of the surrounding cultivators. Everything was quiet. Patriarch Violet Civ and the other nascent soul patriarchs did nothing to interfere. The conflicting views of the East Pill Division and the World Pill Division had come to a head. This chapter was sponsored by Colin Ding and Anonymous. Chapter 250, Giving Birth to the Transformations of the Sun and Moon. Meng Hao frowned. He and Zhou Dekan disliked the World Pill Division, but just now they'd merely discussed their lecture, nothing aggressive. Chen Jiaxi's words were far too direct, like the stab of a sword. The World Pill Division had chosen to openly assault Zhou Dekan, shaming not just him, but the entire East Pill Division. They clearly wanted to improve prestige by destroying their standing. If they came out on the bottom today, news would spread quickly throughout the southern domain. The East Pill Division would lose face, and they'd become laughingstocks. Reputation was of utmost importance for alchemists. This was obviously what Zhou Dekan was thinking. His face was grave as he looked at proud Chen Jiaxi. Chen Jiaxi glared right back at him. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. Based on his skill in the Tao of alchemy, he could be considered a chosen in the World Pill Division. Furthermore, in terms of debating, there were few within the sect who could outmatch him. Days before, when he'd learned that the Black Civ sect had extended invitations to both the East Pill Division and the World Pill Division, he had immediately realized that it was an excellent opportunity. At that time, he had decided to go to any length to take advantage of this opportunity to elevate himself. As an alchemist, there was no better method to rise to prominence than humiliating a furnace lord of the East Pill Division. The mere thought of it made him incredibly excited. As he stared at Zhou Dekan, what he saw was not a cultivator, but a stepping stone to fame. After I crush this old fogey and that punk kid from the East Pill Division, he thought, the name of Chen Jiaxi will rise to fame both within the sect and without. Standing next to Chen Jiaxi was Li Yiming, who harbored exactly the same idea. Zhou Dekan looked away and continued his lecture. There are 3 plant and vegetation realms. The first contains 100,000 plants. The second. Before continuing, Chen Jiaxi laughed uproariously, echoing gratingly. He slammed his palm down and stood. Grandmaster Zhou Dekan, Furnace Lord of the East Pill Division, don't deny others the right to question your lecture content. Are you scared, spouting nonsense, or trying to hoodwink the Black Civ sect? His words were sarcastic, his sneer impossible to ignore. Complacency filled his heart. In his mind, he'd already won. Zhou Dekan angrily spun to face Chen Jiaxi. He couldn't pretend not to hear words blatantly directed at the East Pill Division. Even if nonsense, he had to address it. Seeing his reaction filled Chen Jiaxi with confidence. Before arriving, his inquiries revealed Zhou Dekan would come. Though famous, Chen Jiaxi's investigation left him confident he could defeat him in Tao of alchemy understanding. The Black Civ sect disciples observed silently but seemed excited. Many were conclave disciples, including Han Bei, who watched with a smile as conflict intensified. The 3 nascent soul patriarchs sat with eyes closed, meditating. They didn't interfere, apparently happy at the unfolding scene. Grandmaster Zhou glowering is useless, Chen Jiaxi said coolly. You still haven't explained ultimate truth. His voice seemed normal, but his eyes were filled with ridicule, making Zhou Dekan more furious. Truth is represented by rules, he replied, one word at a time. Regardless of countless permutations, rules exist in your heart. Using rules, unchangeableness catalyzes the 10,000 plants. Verifying the Tao of alchemy's truth creates formulas. With enlightenment, one senses alchemy's vast path. Continued exploration is the true goal. Chen Jiaxi stared in shock. He never imagined Zhou Dekan could respond that way. Actually, before meeting Meng Hao, he couldn't have. But their discussion contained verification and new enlightenment. Chen Jiaxi and Li Yiming both frowned. Surrounding cultivators also seemed enlightened. Grandmaster Zhou, I can't agree, Chen Jiaxi said, his eyes gleaming. He no longer looked down on Zhou Dekan but took him seriously. If the self is unchangeable, where do transformations come from? The self is like a river. If it doesn't flow, it dies. Moving water ensures endless flow. Similarly, a changeable self ensures existence. Zhou Dekan's face flickered. About to respond, Chen Jiaxi interrupted. Can a tree stay motionless in wind? The only tree that doesn't is in a painting. The tree's movement proves the wind and its existence. Grandmaster Zhou, you claim the self is unchangeable. How laughable. Perhaps that's why you're not Violet Furnace Lord. Your Tao of alchemy understanding shows you're like a flower loving its own fragrance. Fishing for fame, you'll only become Violet Furnace Lord in a fairy tale. The vicious words made Zhou Dekan tremble. He pointed at Chen Jiaxi. You. I what? Lost for words. A motionless river is dead water. An unmoving tree exists only in a painting. Grandmaster Joe, you exist in dead water belittling floating clouds. Are you fishing for fame? You live in a painting ignoring heaven and earth, blind to the world's brilliance. You're a flower loving its fragrance. Am I wrong? Chen Jiaxi's voice grew louder. By the end, Joe Dekun's face was pale, his eyes nearly bursting with flame. His opponent twisted his words, yet they seemed reasonable. His mind filled with responses, but he couldn't voice them. Nonsense, he cried. Meng Hao sighed inwardly. Nonsense, Chen Jiaxi said. Very well, what is truth? Consider yin and yang, moon and sun. In alchemy's great world, the boundless sun is yang, encompassing everything that melts and burns, the pill furnace. The bright moon is changeable yin, the pill formula. This is truth. Grandmaster Joe, if you stand at alchemy's pinnacle, do you dare claim the sun furnace exists in your heart? Can you formulate the moon, endless formulas in your heart? Calling you a fishing flower is going easy. Silence. Chen Jiaxi's words echoed through the square. Black Civ disciples looked shocked. Patriarch Violet Civ and the beautiful woman opened their eyes, looking at Chen Jiaxi seriously. Joe Dekun's body trembled. He wanted to speak, but his mind was chaos. All eyes were on him. Being openly ridiculed made him speechless. As he was opening his mouth, Meng Hao's cold voice rang out. I, Fang Mu, have a few questions. He stood and flew to stand next to Joe Dekun atop the dais. Joe Dekun looked at Meng Hao like a blood relative. He knew his incisive way with words. Breathing deeply, he stepped back, happy to let Meng Hao take center stage. Meng Hao's cold gaze swept about, eventually landing on Chen Jiaxi. Please elaborate, Chen Jiaxi said, smiling. His expression was indifferent, but inwardly he was composed and ready. He didn't know much about Fang Mu, but from their first conversation, he knew he wasn't easy to mess with. However, he had faith in his Tao of alchemy. Besides, Fang Mu had finagled his furnace lord status. Chen Jiaxi was supremely confident, a snide smile on his face. Black Civ disciples turned to look at Meng Hao. Han Bei's eyes narrowed, hiding the glow in them. All attention was on Meng Hao, including the beautiful woman who looked at him quizzically. The disciples found Chen Jiaxi's words quite reasonable. I have 3 questions, Meng Hao said coolly. The first regards truth. You mentioned the sun and moon. The boundless sun is the furnace, the bright moon births the formula. Who invented the furnace? Who created the formula? Grandmaster Fang, you've learned little of the Tao of alchemy, Chen Jiaxi laughed. The ancients gazed at the boundless sun and were inspired to forge it. As for formulas, they gained enlightenment from the moon and recorded plant variations. Thus the boundless sun is the furnace and bright moon the formula. The sun and moon forge all living things. Excitement rippled through the crowd. Meng Hao replied coolly. The boundless sun is a heavenly body. Its blinding radiance hides all other stars. When ancients gazed upward, they looked not at the sun but the sky. You claim Grandmaster Joe fishes for fame. Grandmaster Chen, you're a frog in a well, looking at the blazing sun but unable to see the sky containing it. The moon is another heavenly body, frequently seen in the night sky. Darkness and light made people believe night sky and bright day rotated. In reality, among all heavenly bodies, only the heavens themselves don't move. You assert Grandmaster Joe is a flower loving its fragrance. I say you're short-sighted. You, a tiny alchemist, claim the sun and moon forge all things. Since you reveal your overrated self, I tell you today, if sun and moon forge all things, then heaven's forge births the transformations of the sun and moon. His final words thundered, stabbing into Chen Jiaxi's heart, whose face fell immediately. Chapter 251, Meng Hao's Tao of Alchemy. Each Black Civ sect cultivator in the square watched with excitement, as if massive thunderbolts had struck their hearts. The forge of heaven is what gives birth to the transformations of the sun and moon. The words echoed out, causing everyone to pant. The beautiful woman stared at Meng Hao with wide eyes. Next to her, Patriarch Violet Civ was so moved that he closed his eyes. Everything grew silent. Chen Jiaxi's expression immediately changed. How could he possibly have imagined that Fang Mu would be able to speak so viciously? He felt as if a sharp blade had pierced into his very heart. Joe Dekun drew a breath, trembling, though not from excitement. Moments before, he'd believed Chen Jiaxi correct, but hearing Fang Mu speak, he knew his words to be true. Chen Jiaxi composed himself. Grandmaster Fang, you startled me, he said, staring at Meng Hao. Whether you speak of the sun and moon, the sky, or the forge of heaven and earth, all lie upon the path of alchemy. All plants and vegetation can be concocted into medicinal pills. All spirits and souls can concoct the essence of the pill. What I disagreed with was Grandmaster Zhou's assertion that the self is unchanging, yet pill formulas contain countless variations. I said nothing of the transformations of which you speak. Alchemists must embrace transformation of the self. Only by embracing transformation can countless variations arise. Only in this way can you speak of endless pill formulas and concoct the endless varieties of medicinal pills. Your Excellency did mention a person being able to produce countless variations, said Meng Hao coolly. Once again he spoke slowly and calmly. As he stood on the dais, the breeze lifted his long hair, blowing it across his face, partially obscuring the stellar glow in his eyes. Countless variations. The wind and clouds, the thunder and lightning, these are all heavenly changes. The quaking of the earth, the rise of mountains, the flow of great rivers, these are earthly changes. Are you responsible for these great changes of heaven and earth? Is the rain which falls from the sky birthed by the will of Grandmaster Chen? Grandmaster Chen, is it your will which causes the rise and fall of mountains? That was to be my second question. However, there's no need for you to attempt to respond to it because you can't. In truth, you are no Grandmaster. Even if you become one in the future, you will never be worthy to lay claim to such transformations. Can the transformations of heaven and earth truly be contained in your heart? How laughable! As conceited and arrogant as the king of Yelang, you truly overestimate yourself. Meng Hao was now ridiculing Chen Jiaxi in the same voice that Chen Jiaxi had used to ridicule Zhou Dekun. The words cracked like lightning, causing Chen Jiaxi's face to flicker. You really do have a sharp tongue. That's obviously not what I meant. You're completely exaggerating what I said. I was speaking only of pill concocting philosophy. Philosophy, I would love to hear the details. I speak of nothing other than the philosophy of transformation, he replied. Take the best of many schools and fuse it into your own. Absorb the finest aspects of your acquaintances. Eliminate the dregs within the self. Refining pills is like refining the self. By reaching perfection, the path to the pinnacle opens, and transformation's full power flows forth. The surrounding disciples seemed to approve. He continued in a voice that could sever nails and chop iron. When a painter observes millions of mountains, then paints one, his painting contains the essence of all he observed. Thus, a masterpiece is created. Similarly, millions of streams fuse to create a boundless river. This is the philosophy of which I speak. Assemble thoughts from many schools and coalesce them in the self. This is my path to the Tao of alchemy. He flicked his sleeve, and his eyes glittered as he stared at Meng Hao. I'm curious to hear Grandmaster Fang's philosophy of alchemy. His words echoed out into the hearts of the tens of thousands of Black Civ sect disciples. Hanbei looked on thoughtfully. Behind Meng Hao, Zhou Dekun stared, an introspective look in his eyes. Meng Hao looked back at Chen Jiaxi, his expression the same as ever. His tone light, he began. When a painter observes millions of mountains, then paints one, perhaps his painting contains the essence of the mountains he observed. However, the mountain he paints is not real. It emerges from his imagination and is what he believes a mountain to be. In truth, he has already forgotten the first mountain he ever saw because he has seen too many. He has also forgotten the feeling he experienced when he gazed at that first mountain's peak. Millions of streams fuse together to become a great and boundless river, but that river is no longer the stream it once was. It is the amalgamation of many waters, fused together and indistinguishable. That first tiny stream which dreamed of being a river is now dead, killed by the very process it desired. The process of his pursuit causes the painter to forget that first mountain, and because of that, the very reason he wished to paint a mountain in the first place. The process of becoming a river causes the stream to lose itself. Its will is diluted as it becomes a river, and then it is gone. As he spoke, Meng Hao's voice grew louder. This is my third question. By fusing many schools of thought, you lose yourself. You think you have benefited, but in reality, you have no path of your own. If you have no ideal of your own to adhere to, then you have observed millions of mountains, but forgotten why you wanted to paint a mountain to begin with. Without principles of your own to stick to, you are a stream become river, but such a river has no soul. That is true death. Meng Hao flicked his sleeve. His words sent Chen Jiaxi's mind spinning. As cultivators, we must adhere to our own principles. As alchemists, we must adhere to our own Tao of alchemy. Acquaintances and other schools can strengthen our confidence, but we must never lose our own ideal in the search. If the heart is unyielding, nothing can supersede it. Such a heart may seem to contain transformations, but is in truth stable, a foundation. From beginning to end, it will never disappear. It will always exist. An unchangeable heart. Meng Hao's words shook the square. Chen Jiaxi's face twisted as he instinctively retreated a few paces, his eyes shining with confusion. If your heart yields, how can you create anything lasting? Meng Hao continued. Grandmaster Chen, you do not possess a resolute heart. Do you truly have the confidence to mention other schools of thought? Do you have the courage to boast shamelessly of blending together your own path? Do you truly dare to speak to me of the Tao of alchemy? Silence filled the square for a moment, and then conversations filled the air. Chen Jiaxi was panting, and his heart was filled with confusion. Behind Meng Hao, Zhou Decan trembled, his mind reeling. All of a sudden he realized why after all this time he had never been able to become a violet furnace lord. Over the years, I've paid too much attention to the Tao of alchemy of those around me, he thought. I've picked and chosen randomly. I've forgotten about the path I originally wished to tread. If your heart yields, how can you create anything lasting? Patriarch Violet Civ and the beautiful woman exchanged a meaningful glance. Only the ruddy-faced old man next to them sat there with his eyes closed, not having moved a muscle. A buzz of conversation rose up from the Black Civ sect disciples. Meng Hao's words had caused great waves of emotion to rise up in their hearts. Chen Jiaxi's face was pale. Next to him, Li Yiming was breathing heavily. Meng Hao flicked his sleeve. His voice thundered up to the heavens. Because the self never changes, the heart can tolerate the ever-changing transformations of the sun and moon, the maelstroms of heaven and earth, and those arduous journeys through thousands of crags and tens of thousands of torrents. The Tao of alchemy is eternal. The countless transformations contained within the heart are the pill formula. The unchangeable self is the pill furnace. I am the pill furnace and my heart is the pill formula. Refine the interior to achieve immortality. Refine the exterior to achieve the boundless Tao of alchemy. Fuse them together and this is the truth of alchemy. Alchemy is the heavens. Alchemy is the earth. Alchemy is the world. This is my Tao of alchemy. Finally, the ruddy-faced man next to Patriarch Violet Civ opened his eyes and looked at Meng Hao. Each and every one of the Black Civ sect cultivators, regardless of who they were now looking at Meng Hao. A silence as thick as death hung over them as they stared with brightly shining eyes. Zhou Decan stared excitedly at Meng Hao. As of now, not a shred of doubt existed in his heart. All of it had been replaced by passion and pride. It was all because of Fang Mu, alchemist of the East Pill Division. He had already made up his mind. When he returned to the sect, he would help Fang Mu gain the acceptance of the other furnace lords. Actually, after this debate, it wouldn't take long for the entire southern domain to be talking about Fang Mu. Chen Jiaxi's face was pale as if his spirit had fled. Next to him, Li Yiming was covered in cold sweat, mumbling to himself, reciting Meng Hao's words, branding them into his heart. An indescribable silence filled the square. Everyone was shaken to the core by Meng Hao's words. Patriarch Violet Civ and the other nascent soul cultivators were all thinking exactly the same thing. This kid has a limitless future. Nonsense, cried Chen Jiaxi, his shrill cry breaking the silence. He leaped up onto the dais to stand directly in front of Meng Hao. His eyes were bloodshot and glared angrily at Meng Hao, shamed into rage. You're nothing but sharp-tongued and shameless. If words could concoct pills, then even mortals could practice alchemy. I have been cultivating the Tao of alchemy for years. I have memorized 100,000 varieties of plants and vegetation. I know of 800,000 grafting variations. You finagled your way to being a furnace lord, but really, you're nothing more than a master alchemist. In this regard, do you dare to compete with me? Chen Jiaxi really had no other option left. His previous aggressiveness had been thoroughly trampled down by Meng Hao's fierce diatribe. It felt like being slapped across the face, like having a dagger plunged into his chest. As an alchemist, all of it was a direct attack on him. How do you want to compete? Replied Meng Hao, his voice cold, his eyes icy. He had long decided to crush Chen Jiaxi. Chapter 252, Crushing. You and me, a contest of plant and vegetation knowledge, said Chen Jiaxi, glaring at Meng Hao. In his opinion, Fang Mu had finagled his way to being a furnace lord and was far too young to compare, considering the years he'd spent mastering plants and vegetation. He had utmost confidence in his ability. True, there were people within the sect who could surpass him, but he was absolutely sure that he could achieve victory over this trifling, sharp-tongued Fang Mu. Even as he spoke, he waved his right hand, causing 2 black, withered branches to fly out of his bag of holding. Dried spring equinox sapling, thought Zhou Decan, staring at the dried branches. These treasured items have been passed down since ancient times. Dried spring equinox sapling. Chen Jiaxi grabbed one of the branches and held it in his hand. Grandmaster Fang Mu, you most likely do not recognize this item, so allow me to explain. This plant is rarely seen in the modern world and does not occur naturally. The ancient method used to produce it has long since been lost. It has many uses, but it is because of one of its most amazing uses that it came to be called the ancestor of all plants. Contained within this ancient plant is the essence of most types of plants and vegetation. As such, an alchemist such as myself can fill my spiritual sense with all my knowledge of plants and vegetation, imbue it into this dried spring equinox sapling, and cause it to sprout. The greater the body of knowledge, the more sprouts will appear. This will clearly prove which of us has the greatest mastery of plants and vegetation. Xianxia only had these 2 stems of dried spring equinox. He had previously acquired them through a series of lucky coincidences and considered them to be precious treasures. Now that he had been pushed into a corner, he pulled them out in his attempt to grow his reputation in the future. Meng Hao's expression remained calm, though internally he was leaping with excitement. He had read of the dried spring equinox stem in ancient records. It had miraculous uses difficult to explain. One of its greatest functions was improving the success rate when concocting medicinal pills. By adding one of the stems to a batch of medicinal pills, the success rate would be increased significantly, perhaps even to 100%. Without hesitation, Meng Hao took the dried spring equinox stem in hand and glanced at it. He felt it was somewhat small, only about as thick as a finger. "Grandmaster Fang, let's begin," said Xianxia eerily. He sounded like he couldn't wait to crush Fang Mu. All the Black Sieve sect cultivators watched with concentration. The benefits from this alchemy lecture were immense. Hanbei sat in the crowd, watching Meng Hao. Jade felt anxious. He'd heard the striking story of Meng Hao becoming a master alchemist, yet remained worried. Seeing his expression, Xianxia's confidence grew. He didn't wait for Meng Hao. Instead, he poured spiritual sense into the dried stem. With a cold laugh, he said, "1 sprout indicates mastery of 100,000 plants and vegetation. 2 sprouts represents 200,000 variations. Grandmaster Fang, I suggest you take this seriously." A bright glow emanated from the stem, filling the square and drawing all eyes. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever. His spiritual sense burst out, flying directly into the dried stem. Time passed slowly, enough for a single incense stick to burn. Suddenly, a green sprout appeared on the dried stem in Xianxia's hand, the same you might see during the spring equinox. 100,000 plants. Grandmaster Chen has already shown mastery of 100,000 plants. Who knows how many Grandmaster Fang? Huh. Even as the Black Sieve sect disciples began to discuss the proceedings, 2 sprouts appeared on the stem in Meng Hao's hand. Meng Hao's expression remained calm as the 2 sprouts appeared. However, the onlookers were shocked, as was Xianxia. His eyes widened. He'd never seen anyone produce 2 sprouts from the stem in the time it takes 1 incense stick to burn. "It doesn't matter," he told himself. "With my skill, I'll defeat this finagler in the end." A snide expression filled his face. However, at that exact moment, a 3rd sprout appeared, then a 4th, a 5th, and 9 sprouts appeared in total. It all happened in the space of about 10 breaths. The scene caused gasps of astonishment to fill the air. The Black Sieve sect cultivators were completely astounded. How is this possible? 9 sprouts. That represents 900,000 medicinal plants, 900,000 variations. This Grandmaster Fang is so young, how could he have such terrifying skill with plants? That's 9. Suddenly, a 10th sprout grew out of the dried stem. Xianxia, on the other hand, had only produced 3 sprouts. Impossible, thought Xianxia, his eyes reddening. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. His hair fell in disarray as he let out a wild howl, attempting to summon more sprouts. In truth, he'd only mastered 900,000 plant and vegetation variations, placing him at the peak of the 2nd realm. He could only cause 9 sprouts to appear. At this moment, right after the 10 sprouts appeared, suddenly, a flower bud wriggled out, drawing everyone's attention, even Xianxia's and Li Yiming's. A popping sound rang out as the bud opened, into a tiny white flower. Li Yiming's face drained of blood, an ancient dried spring equinox blooming. It's. His expression was one of ultimate astonishment. He was well aware of the significance of the dried stem blooming. His voice filled with excitement, Jade said, 100,000 medicinal plants, 1 million variations, 100 million grafting variations. The blooming of the ancient tree represents the millions of grafting variations. If 10 flowers appear, it represents all 100 million graft variations. He had never imagined that Meng Hao's skill with plants and vegetation could have reached such a shocking level. Most furnace lords' mastery of plants and vegetation stopped somewhere in the tens of millions. Only violet furnace lords could reach the level of 100 million grafting variations. You, Chen Jiaxi gaped at Meng Hao, his mind reeling, his vision dimmed. He'd never imagined Fang Mu's mastery could reach this state. Had he known, he would never have competed. His voice quavered and his body trembled. He was about to say something more when suddenly a second flower appeared, then a third and a fourth. One flower after another, rocking Chen Jiaxi's spirit. The cultivators in the square were thrown into a frenzy. They stared at Meng Hao with looks of complete shock and disbelief. 6 flowers, 7 flowers, 8 flowers, 9 flowers. Every new flower sent waves of astonishment through the hearts of the onlookers, even Patriarch Violet Civ and the 2 patriarchs next to him. Their breathing was ragged as they watched Meng Hao, their eyes burning. Finally, the 10th flower appeared. When the 10th flower appeared, Chen Jiaxi's vision went black. He was on the verge of passing out. Anguished howls of grief welled up in his heart. This turn of events could never have been predicted. How could he have encountered someone so inhuman here in the Black Civ sect? In truth, were he to know that Fang Mu was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, he would certainly pass out immediately. Inhuman, thought Joe Deccan, his body trembling, his vision blank. This was not a competition between two people. Fang Mu had completely crushed Chen Jiaxi. There was simply no way for him to even fight back. He was utterly and thoroughly defeated. Patriarch Violet Civ and the 2 others were breathing heavily, staring fixedly at the calm Meng Hao, as if he were some sort of precious treasure. A massive commotion of conversation exploded among the Black Civ sect cultivators. The cultivators in attendance all had some knowledge of the Tao of alchemy. How could they not understand the significance of what they were seeing? Grandmaster Fang Mu. The dried stem blossomed 10 times. The ultimate achievement, 100 million grafting variations. Amidst uproarious hubbub, Meng Hao suddenly lifted his head. Without even looking at the dried stem, he put it into his bag of holding. Obviously, he didn't plan to return it. So do you still want to compete in plants and vegetation? He said. In front of him, Chen Jiaxi's face was deathly pale, and his entire body was quivering. He tilted his head back. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes shone with demented insanity. Yes, he cried, staring at Meng Hao, his eyes filled with jealousy and hatred. He hated that his opponent was so young, yet possessed such mastery of plants and vegetation. He hated that his opponent was an East Pill Furnace Lord. He hated that his opponent left him speechless, both with his words and his Tao of alchemy. He especially hated that his opponent wouldn't let him win, wouldn't let Chen Jiaxi trample over him to rise to prominence. His hatred seeped into his bones, giving rise to devilish insanity. We will compete in instantaneous formula scrying, said Chen Jiaxi, his voice hoarse. Down below, Li Yiming had planned to pull him back. However, after seeing the wild, animalistic look in Chen Jiaxi's eyes, he simply sighed inwardly. All right, if you want another competition, you'll have it, said Meng Hao coolly. Looking at Chen Jiaxi's maddened state, he continued. However, such a competition bores me. If you want to compete, let's make a bet. Any pill the other party can identify will be surrendered immediately. Joe Deccan gasped at the viciousness of it. This would truly be the fatal blow. Li Yiming's face twisted. At the same moment, Chen Jiaxi seemed to recover some of his common sense. However, he couldn't let go of the hatred within his heart. He pushed his common sense down, ignoring it. Fine, I won't stop until I win. His voice rang out, causing all of the Black Civ sect disciples to let out a collective gasp. Li Yiming and Joe Deccan both seemed to be shaking with anxiety. I won't stop until I win meant the competition wouldn't end while pills remained to produce. The only way to end was to quit, the ultimate defeat. Li Yiming watched anxiously as red-eyed Chen Jiaxi slapped his bag of holding to produce a medicinal pill and toss it to Meng Hao. Meng Hao grabbed it and looked at it. World Mirage Pill, Heavenly Dawn Sap, 100 Tomb Soil, Peace Dissemination Leaf, 9th Sexionary Grass. Having finished speaking, Meng Hao placed the medicinal pill in his bag of holding and looked at Chen Jiaxi. Chen Jiaxi glared at him. He wanted to say that Meng Hao was wrong. However, they were both alchemists. To do that would lose him even more face than being openly defeated, and he would lose any right to continue. He slapped his bag of holding to produce another medicinal pill, which he threw over to Meng Hao. Frigid Lightning Pill, said Meng Hao coolly. Not many of these pills exist. It requires root of seasonal glory grass, harvested amidst the snows of winter, as well as gold and iron sap, lightning fire grass. He continued to list out dozens of medicinal plants. This pill, interesting. I'm not sure of the name, but it contains power to strengthen the arms. It's obviously a body refining pill. It contains indomitable mountain flower containment sapling. This is actually a magic pill which can melt the blood and transform it into explosive power. It contains crushed green burst, celestial heaven oil. Fellow Taoist Chen, you have many unique pills. Excellent, excellent. I'm not sure the name of this pill, but it's clearly a poison pill. It contains. Time passed slowly. Zhou Dekun watched in shock. Chen Jiaxi seemed on the verge of collapse, his face ashen as he tried to outdo Meng Hao. But he had no chance. He was simply handing over pills. In the time it takes half an incense stick to burn, he delivered nearly 100 different pills to Meng Hao. Chapter 253, Primordial Heavenly Replenishing Pill. In half an incense stick's time, 100 different pills had been delivered. Chen Jiaxi trembled. His face was ashen. His madness had exploded as he found not a single pill he could produce that his opponent couldn't identify. This skill left Chen Jiaxi in despair. He wanted to cry his opponent was wrong, but dared not. If Fang Mu then concocted an identical pill, Chen Jiaxi's reputation would be ruined. Li Yiming watched bitterly as Chen Jiaxi handed over pill after pill, and Meng Hao stowed them. His scalp was numb, his heart filled with indescribable fear. The surrounding Black Civ sect disciples watched the scene in astonishment. From their perspective, Chen Jiaxi wasn't competing with Fang Mu, he was just giving him pills. On the other hand, Meng Hao's actions left them buzzing with shock. His unfathomable skill with plants and vegetation, his irrefutable logic regarding the Tao of alchemy, and his fearsome instantaneous formula scrying just added layer after layer of mystery. As they watched him, their faces filled with continuously growing amazement. From beginning to end, Meng Hao produced no pills himself. This was because he never misidentified any pill produced. Eventually, he felt a bit embarrassed. Chen Jiaxi, of course, had the worst of it all. His heart bled, his eyes were growing dry, and his body trembled. Everything seemed to be going black. However, he continued to pull out medicinal pills. He had utmost confidence in each pill, and yet they all ended up in his opponent's bag of holding. There was no way to put an end to it. Just now, he had said, I won't stop until I win. He wouldn't be able to end until he ran out of medicinal pills. As he pulled out the 127th pill, he suddenly lifted his head to look at Meng Hao. Then, he radiated madness as he slowly put the pill back into his bag of holding and instead retrieved a jade box. The jade box was covered with black splotches, as if it had been entombed in the earth for countless years. This was an object that Chen Jiaxi originally hadn't intended to reveal. To him, it was a precious treasure of a lifetime. In fact, when he had uttered the words, I won't stop until I win, he hadn't even considered to include this item in the statement. Suddenly, he realized that if he wanted to gain complete victory, he would have to win at least one time. And if he wanted that, then he must use the item in the jade box. After all the fierce struggle now, pulling out this object finally gave him hope. The instant the box appeared, all eyes came to rest upon it. Anyone could tell that the pill inside this box would most certainly determine victory or defeat. The black stains on the box made it obvious to all the onlookers that the box was so old it was beginning to decay. There was even a faint, gruesome death aura wafting out from the box. A serious look filled the eyes of Patriarch Violet Civ and his two companions. Chen Jiaxi gritted his teeth and slowly said, if you know the formula to this pill, then I, Chen Jiaxi, will admit defeat, and if I ever meet your excellency in the future, will immediately fall to the ground and kowtow to you. If you don't know the formula, then I will not cause any further trouble for you. I will only require that you return all the pills I produced just now. Then, this matter will be concluded. Zhou Dekun's eyes narrowed, and before Meng Hao could say anything, he strode forward and beratingly said, Chen Jiaxi, you are a scarlet-robed master alchemist of the World Pill Division. Do you have any face? This is obviously an ancient medicinal pill whose pill formula has been lost for countless ages. How could a modern-day alchemist possibly be able to identify it? He was obviously worried about Meng Hao leaping to accept the challenge. A buzz rose up from the surrounding Black Civ sect disciples. An ancient medicinal pill. Such pills from ancient times were very rare. Even one would be enough to cause an incredible stir. Furthermore, the formulas for most ancient pills were lost. Even the three great alchemists might have trouble identifying an ancient pill. Each and every such pill could be considered a consummate pill. Where did Grandmaster Chen get an ancient medicinal pill? You almost never see something like that. If it were auctioned off, the price it would get would be unimaginable. Could it be one of Grandmaster Eternal Mountain's treasure that he bestowed upon Grandmaster Chen as a gift? As the conversations broke out, Li Yiming took a deep breath. Even he never imagined that Chen Jiaxi would possess an ancient medicinal pill. "Do you dare?" shouted Chen Jiaxi, glaring at Meng Hao. Meng Hao looked at the jade box, and his eyes filled with imposing aura. He had seen an ancient medicinal pill before, the day Grandmaster Eternal Mountain had visited the Violet Fate sect. That pill had been an entrancement pill. Meng Hao thought for a moment, and then his eyes flickered with resolve. He made a grasping motion, and the jade box in Chen Jiaxi's hand flew over to him. Seeing Meng Hao agree to the challenge caused Zhou Dekun's heart to fill with anxiety. Li Yiming also appeared shaken. Chen Jiaxi, on the other hand, let out an inward sigh of relief. His eyes filled with a cold sneer. He knew from the moment his opponent had agreed that victory was his. He had acquired this treasured ancient medicinal pill a few years ago from some old painter. It had nearly left him in poverty, and he had been forced to concoct pills like a slave for 3 years as part of the deal to acquire it. He didn't dare to casually consume it. He planned to wait until his longevity was reaching its end before doing so, or perhaps he would trade it for some incredibly priceless treasure. As a matter of fact, the pill's appearance had already caught the attention of the Black Civ sect. It seemed they already were interested in acquiring it. Meng Hao took hold of the jade box. His expression was serious as he slowly opened it. As he did, a reddish glow shined up from within. Faint strands of celestial music drifted about, and within the glow, the phantom image of a young boy could be seen. He appeared to be dancing in pleasure. The image instantly caused Patriarch Violet Civ and his 2 companions to gasp. The beautiful woman immediately rose to her feet. The amazement of the surrounding Black Civ sect disciples was really at its peak. Buzzing conversations filled the air, and Zhou Dekun's face went pale white. An ancient medicinal pill which can create illusory images. This pill is even surrounded by celestial sound. Just what pill is this? Li Yiming was also completely shocked as he stared at the glowing red light emanating up from Meng Hao's hands. As for Chen Jiaxi, a fresh breath of life seemed to have washed over him. He was in high spirits and gave a cold laugh as he looked at Meng Hao. Seeing Meng Hao's look of intense concentration, he lifted his chin. "Grandmaster Fang, considering your skill in the Tao of Alchemy, don't tell me that you can't identify this pill." "Ah, forget about it. I'll just explain it for you. You know what pill this is. The name of this pill should be known to all alchemists. This is one of the 3 great medicinal pills of the ancient Tao of Alchemy, primordial heavenly replenishing pill." The Black Civ sect cultivators didn't seem to be familiar with the name of the pill. However, upon hearing the name, Li Yiming immediately stood up. A look of disbelief filled his face as he stared at the glow rising up into the sky. "Primordial, heavenly replenishing pill." Zhou Dekun panted, his body shaking. He stepped forward, breathing hard and staring at the pill in Meng Hao's hands. Suddenly, his voice rang through the square. "Crimson glow, a dancing child accompanied by celestial music. This is most certainly one of the 3 great ancient pills. Primordial heavenly replenishing pill. According to legend, anyone who consumes it can steal luck from the heavens and increase longevity by 1,000 years. The audience buzzed in excitement. A medicinal pill which can increase longevity, even if only by a 60-year cycle, would be incredibly rare. The price people would be willing to pay for such a thing would be unthinkable. A consummate pill which could increase lifespan by 1,000 years was even more incredible. Patriarch Violet Civ's eyes shined with unprecedented brightness. The only other time a glow like this had been seen in his eyes was when he had been about to snatch ultimate vexation. After all, his longevity had long since been approaching its end. The ruddy-faced old man next to him also looked at the jade box with profoundly glowing eyes. He began to mutter to himself. With his chin set complacently, Chen Jiaxi looked at Meng Hao and said, "Primordial heavenly replenishing pill." The word primordial includes 10,000 variations of plants and vegetation. As for the words heavenly replenishing, it is just as Grandmaster Zhou just said. It can increase longevity by 1,000 years. Chen Jiaxi was now completely back in control of himself. He had suffered defeat before, but with the appearance of this pill, he now viewed himself as having already won. "Grandmaster Fang," he continued, "I believe it's now your turn. Please tell me the pill formula for the primordial heavenly replenishing pill if you're able." He glared at Meng Hao aggressively. Everything went quiet, as all eyes focused on the crimson glow emanating out of the jade box, and the red pill which rested inside. Li Yiming also seemed to have recovered his wits. He took a deep breath, and his eyes began to shine. He knew in his heart that there was no way Fang Mu could achieve victory now. Zhou Dekun cursed silently. This was an ancient pill, one of the three great miraculous pills. Its name was majestic, and there was definitely no modern-day alchemist who could know the formula. He took a step forward. Glowering at Chen Jiaxi, he said, "Chen Jiaxi, you are a scarlet-robed alchemist of the World Pill Division. Such tactics as this are contemptible. People like us, even people like your master, Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, could never identify the formula of the primordial heavenly replenishing pill. Furthermore, the contest just now was to identify pills that you had concocted. Did you concoct the primordial heavenly replenishing pill? Even you don't know the formula, yet you dare to bring it out as part of this contest." Chen Jiaxi laughed coldly. "This was agreed upon by Grandmaster Fang," he said in a growling voice. "You can't claim that I'm breaking the rules." He ignored Zhou Dekun and stared again at Meng Hao. "Grandmaster Fang, I'm not the only person awaiting your answer. There are tens of thousands of others who are all eagerly awaiting to hear the pill formula. Haven't you been looking at the primordial heavenly replenishing pill for long enough?" He took a step forward and, seeing Meng Hao's brow furrowed as it was, felt all his previous feelings of depression melting away. "If you can't identify it, then so be it. However, you must produce all of my pills from just now and return them immediately." "Fang Mu," he shouted, his voice echoing throughout the square. "Can you or can you not identify the pill formula?" Meng Hao slowly raised his head. His gaze moved from the medicinal pill and came to rest on Chen Jiaxi. Chapter 254, Thunder Across a Plain. "This pill—" Meng Hao's face showed nothing. His voice echoed as if from unfathomably deep waters, drawing all eyes. Everyone, even Zhou Dekun, seemed to have assumed Meng Hao had lost. He appeared to have no hope of victory. Even a violet furnace lord couldn't identify an ancient pill formula. "What of this pill?" interrupted Chen Jiaxi. "Fang Mu, why be wordy about it? Losing is losing, there's no need to struggle against it." He gave a cold laugh. Meng Hao looked calmly at Chen Jiaxi. When he spoke, his words were neither hasty nor halting. "The outer layer of this pill bears evidence of having been buried in the ground for at least 1,000 years. Its death aura is dense, infecting even the Jade box. However, the pill has not been harmed at all. The strange thing is that the middle layer of the pill is different. It contains only 700 years of time. Furthermore, although some of the plant and vegetation variations appear at first to have been refined with the ancient non-smelting technique, in fact, there are actually traces of smelting fire on them." As Meng Hao spoke, Chen Jiaxi's cold smile grew wider. "The inner layer of the pill," continued Meng Hao, "is very strange. There are 17 various plant and vegetation variations there, none of which exceed 200 years in age. That is why it took me a bit longer to inspect it. I'm not sure why this supposed primordial heavenly replenishing pill, which can extend one's lifespan by 1,000 years, would have an exterior, a middle, and a center that are so vastly different." As soon as he finished speaking, a buzz rose up from the audience. "What does that mean? Don't tell me the pill is a fake." "How could it be fake? There was obviously celestial music just now and the dancing child. Those things couldn't be fake. Don't tell me Fang Mu is just babbling nonsense." As the cultivators discussed the matter, Chen Jiaxi began to laugh uproariously. His grim, cold laughter echoed out in all directions. He flicked his sleeve and once again spoke, his voice dripping with ridicule. "Fang Mu, by simply admitting defeat, then I, Chen Jiaxi, could show respect to your status as a furnace lord of the East Pill Division. But instead, you use low-down, underhanded means to attempt to achieve victory. You try to besmirch this ancient medicinal pill by saying that it's a forgery. Competing with you has truly brought me great loss of face. What a waste. I can't believe the East Pill Division has produced an alchemist such as you, such an utter disgrace. No wonder you had to finagle your way into being a furnace lord. Now I, Chen Jiaxi, thoroughly understand the entire situation." Li Yiming's expression also filled with derision. Zhou Dekun's face was bright red. As an alchemist, defeat should be recognized, and respect for the Tao of alchemy should never be forgotten. He sighed inwardly, and was just about to open his mouth in an attempt to smooth the situation over, when Meng Hao's calm voice once again rang out. "When did I say the pill was a forgery?" he asked calmly. He appeared oblivious to the onlookers' gazes and Chen Jiaxi's complacency. "You sharp-tongued punk," cried Chen Jiaxi, throwing any thoughts of mercy to the wind. "Are you still trying to argue? Just now you obviously implied that the pill was fake, didn't you? Do you have an explanation for that? Fang Mu, do you have even the slightest scrap of face left? All the Black Civ sect disciples were now looking at Meng Hao. Their faces were filled with strange expressions. Patriarch Violet Civ and the other two watched on wordlessly with furrowed brows. "Would you pipe down?" roared Meng Hao. His eyes blazed like lightning on a pitch-black night. His words echoed like thunder across a plain with such force that Chen Jiaxi's mind shook. He instinctively stepped back, the sound ringing in his ears. Meng Hao stepped forward. He spoke, his words devoid of any courtesy. "You babble nonsense. You invert right and wrong. You don't measure up to me when it comes to the Tao of alchemy, nor can your skill with plants and vegetation compare to mine. You are even further behind when it comes to instantaneous formula scrying, and yet you still dare to bare your fangs and brandish your claws in front of me. Fang Mu made 3 points just now, and none of them contained the word forgery. That word came from you, you self-righteous twit. This competition was your idea. Defeat after defeat has revealed your true face, you stooge. You ask me if I have face. Let me ask you, who is there that would possibly give face to you?" Meng Hao's voice grew louder and louder, each sentence stabbing into Chen Jiaxi's psyche like a sharp sword. His eyes filled with flames of fury. However, as Meng Hao approached him, dread welled up in his heart, and he again retreated. "You are a mere scarlet-robed master alchemist of the World Pill Division. Even people above you in the World Pill Division don't qualify to constantly accuse me of finagling my way into being a Furnace Lord. I became a Furnace Lord because of the graces of Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, and he approved of the pill I concocted. Therefore, repudiating me is the same as repudiating Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, and therefore the whole of the World Pill Division." Meng Hao took another step forward, his words ringing out around him in a roar. "Such actions on the part of a member of the World Pill Division are nothing less than treason against your sect." The roar of Meng Hao's words sent Chen Jiaxi's mind spinning, his eyes filled with veins of blood. "You!" His body trembled and he raised an accusatory finger toward Meng Hao. He was normally capable of sharply incisive words, but now his mind was in chaos and he couldn't even speak. Meng Hao's words roared like thunder. "To further your glory, you repudiate Eternal Mountain and commit treason. You are a lowlife, worse than pigs or dogs. What makes you think you have the face to stand before me and rave arrogantly? What gives you courage to stand on the same stage as me while I lecture on alchemy?" Meng Hao flicked his sleeve. His words slammed into Chen Jiaxi's ears, causing his body to shake and his mind to reel and rock. "Fang Mu," he shrieked shrilly. "Finally, let's discuss this medicinal pill of yours. Its exterior is 1,000 years old, its middle is 700, and its interior roughly 300. It is no forgery. However, it will not add 1,000 years to your lifespan. Why? Because this pill is clearly a poison pill. The outer layer is simply a coating, while the middle layer serves to conceal the poison congealed within the center. What kind of scoundrel alchemist are you to produce such a pill? Furthermore, what is your intention in bringing it out? Don't tell me you plan to sell it to the senior generation of the Black Civ sect. Upon consuming this pill, the chi passageways will turn backward, and the chi and blood will reverse their flow. Within the space of 3 breaths, you will begin to bleed from your eyes, nose, and mouth. Within 10 breaths, your garments will be soaked with gore, and you will be in such excruciating pain that you will wish you weren't alive. After enough time passes for an incense stick to burn, your blood will freeze and you will be dead." Meng Hao waved his hand, sending the jade box and the red pill flying back to Chen Jiaxi, who stood there, his hair disheveled, his entire body quivering. Meng Hao gave a cold snort, then continued in a voice that could sever nails and chop iron. "That is the response of Fang Mu. If you pulled out a forgery, I could identify it easily. But to pull out a poison pill like this shows how truly pernicious you are, worthy of death. There is no need for me to continue to compete with you." Chen Jiaxi felt as if his mind were being ripped in two. "This is no poison pill," he bellowed madly. "If so, then why don't you consume it?" said Meng Hao, his voice sharp as a blade, his eyes flickering like lightning. "You," raved Chen Jiaxi. He had gone through countless hardships to acquire this pill, and actually had planned to sell it at an exorbitant price to the Black Civ sect. However, Meng Hao's words just now had caused Patriarch Violet Civ and the other 2 patriarchs to stare suspiciously. The surrounding Black Civ sect disciples also stared, their expressions grim. Li Yiming felt as if his internal organs were about to burst. The tables had turned too quickly. Just now, Chen Jiaxi had clearly been in the superior position, and then in a blink of an eye, everything had been reversed. Li Yiming's mind spun blankly. It wasn't just him. Zhou Dekun watched on dumbly. He had been very sure that the pill was real and had never imagined that the events just now could occur. Everything Meng Hao said seemed perfectly reasonable. You. Chen Jiaxi's mind spun so violently he almost couldn't comprehend what was happening. He had been pushed into the ultimate corner by Meng Hao. If he didn't consume the pill, then everyone would obviously suspect him. Feng Mu, he howled. Suddenly, he threw the pill into his mouth. Immediately, streaks of blood snaked through his eyes and blue veins bulged on his forehead. He looked like some sort of devilish fiend. Patriarch Violet Civ hesitated for a moment when this happened, but didn't move to interfere. The ruddy-faced man sitting next to him also was shaken inwardly, yet did nothing. I've consumed it, he howled, glaring at Meng Hao. Did you see, Feng Mu? I consumed the primordial heavenly replenishing pill. 1, 2, 3, said Meng Hao, his voice light. When he said the word three breaths had passed. Chen Jiaxi's face suddenly changed. His body began to tremble and his face distorted. He let out a blood-curdling scream and then blood began to ooze out of his eyes, mouth, and nose. Immediately, all of the cultivators present on the 57th mountain of the Black Civ sect burst into a commotion. Many of them shot to their feet, their eyes filled with astonishment. Li Yiming's vision began to grow dark, and his mind filled with a spinning roar that caused him to nearly lose consciousness. Zhou Dekun gasped, his face filled with disbelief as he looked at Chen Jiaxi standing there, screaming miserably, blood dripping down his face. Patriarch Violet Civ's pupils constricted and then began to fill with fury. Next to him, the ruddy-faced old man frowned, and his eyes began to fill with displeasure. Meng Hao stood there on the stage, continuing to count softly. 4, 5, 6. As Meng Hao counted, Chen Jiaxi fell to the ground, screaming shrilly. His body thrashed and blood flew everywhere. His chi passageways had reversed, and popping sounds could be heard ringing out from within his body. A mist of blood sprayed from his mouth, turning his red robe into a true garment of gore. All of this was exactly as Meng Hao had described. Soon, the 10th breath would arrive, and Chen Jiaxi would die. However, the moment Meng Hao spoke the word 9, his body suddenly flickered forward. His right hand pressed down onto the top of wheezing Chen Jiaxi's head. Immediately, Chen Jiaxi's screaming ceased. His body trembled and his aura was feeble, but it seemed that his trip down the road of death had paused momentarily. From the look of it, though, he only had a few moments left before death found him. For the sake of Grandmaster Eternal Mountain, Feng Mu is going to save your life today, said Meng Hao coolly. His face was as calm as ever. Therefore, no one knew that his heart was actually surging with waves of indescribable excitement. Chapter 255. She was floating in the wind. As soon as the words left his mouth, he slapped his bag of holding. A pill cauldron flew out along with earthly fire crystals and medicinal plants. He began to concoct a pill in front of everyone. He worked at incredible speed. To the watchers, it was clear he was trying to save Chen Jiaxi. To ensure complete success, he even extracted a drop of blood from Chen Jiaxi's forehead. The blood entered the pill furnace, clearly as a way to make the medicinal pill more effective in purging the poison. Everything was silent, all eyes on Meng Hao. Since stepping into the Tao of alchemy, this was the fastest he'd ever concocted a pill. Within moments, fragrance filled the square. Meng Hao waved his hand and a pink pill flew out. It shot like lightning into Chen Jiaxi's mouth. His life hung by a thread. Tens of thousands of eyes were fixed on Chen Jiaxi. As soon as he consumed the pill, a tremor shook his body. Then shockingly, his hair rapidly turned white. His skin withered as his vitality seeped away. Within breaths, he'd aged nearly 100 years. From middle-aged, he became an old man with one foot in the grave. Wrinkles covered his face, and he emanated ancientness. His cultivation base, once late foundation establishment, seemed to be vanishing with his decrepitness. The entire process from beginning to end only took about 10 breaths worth of time. Chen Jiaxi looked completely different. He was now a feeble old man with no cultivation base. However, the death aura which had been drifting off of him moments ago had been replaced with life force. When this happened, his eyes suddenly opened. Suddenly he coughed up a massive congealment of blood, along with what remained of the medicinal pill. It was about the size of a fingernail, half as large as it had been before. It wasn't the pill Meng Hao had concocted, but the pill everyone had taken to be the primordial heavenly replenishing pill. As soon as he spat it out, Meng Hao waved his sleeve, collecting it into a pill bottle. Before he could stow it, Patriarch Violet Civ's eyes flickered. He waved his hand, pulling the bottle from Meng Hao's hands into his own. Meng Hao ignored this, focusing on Chen Jiaxi, who trembled with confusion in his eyes. In the moment before the poison killed you, I managed to prevent it from continuing to dissolve. The poison is not impossible to dispel. However, given my current skill in the Tao of alchemy, I was unable to find the proper combination of medicinal plants in such a short time. Therefore, I used the simplest method possible, and also the most direct. I stimulated your life force and shattered your cultivation base. In this manner, I was able to force out the poison. As for your cultivation base, if you practice recuperative cultivation, it should slowly recover. Chen Jiaxi said nothing as Li Yiming helped him to his feet. He stared blankly at Meng Hao, then let out a bitter laugh. Eternal Mountain once said that alchemic battles are like magical battles. Death can come with a single thought. Today, I am convinced of this truth. With that, he clasped hands in salute. His body trembled as he lowered his head to conceal the venomous hatred seeping from his heart. Li Yiming also clasped hands and bowed to Patriarch Violet Civ and the others. They clearly could not stay on the mountain, so he took hold of Chen Jiaxi and flew up into the sky, disappearing off into the distance. A few Black Civ sect cultivators rose to accompany them as they left. Considering all of Meng Hao's experiences, it was impossible for him to not notice Chen Jiaxi's hatred. Had that hatred not been there, Meng Hao, well aware of how much he had come out on top, would have helped the man recover his cultivation base more quickly. But now he abandoned such thoughts. Long before he had become Fang Mu, he had learned to treat his enemies with icy coldness. Meng Hao turned to look at Patriarch Violet Civ, who was currently examining the medicinal pill which Chen Jiaxi had just vomited out. Elder Violet Civ, he said with a polite smile, I won that pill in the competition just now. If you would like it, sir, perhaps you could state what you intend to trade for it. Patriarch Violet Civ laughed loudly. Shaking his head, he flicked his sleeve, and the medicinal pill in its bottle flew back to Meng Hao. He had scanned it with divine sense just now. Even though he didn't know much about the Tao of alchemy, he was a nascent soul cultivator who had lived many, many years. How could he not have an understanding of things like the ancient medicinal pills? Actually, he had previously specifically studied ancient medicinal pills. Just now, no matter how he examined it, he couldn't see anything particularly special about the pill. In fact, when he held it in hand, he could detect a fishy, rotten odor. After a brief discussion with the ruddy-faced man using divine sense, they had determined that it definitely was a poison pill. The fact that he so quickly returned the pill to Meng Hao had a lot to do with everything that Meng Hao had just said and done. Before, everyone in the Black Civ sect, including Patriarch Violet Civ and his companions, hadn't paid much more than a glance to Fang Mu. As of now, though, it was obvious to everyone that Fang Mu far exceeded Zhou Dekun. This was especially true of his final vicious display. From now on, Patriarch Violet Civ would pay closer attention to this Fang Mu. Meng Hao accepted the pill bottle with a smile, then casually tossed it into his bag of holding. The alchemy lecture was now over. Zhou Dekun invited Meng Hao to join him at a feast thrown by the Black Civ sect, but he politely declined. His face covered with exhaustion, he returned to Black Welcoming Peak. Back in his residence, he sat down cross-legged to restore his energy. Time passed by, and soon moonlight filled the sky. Meng Hao suddenly opened his eyes and waved his right hand. A pill furnace appeared, along with an earthly fire crystal. He also produced his Furnace Lord medallion and its protective shield. After securing himself within the shield, he slapped his bag of holding to produce the pill bottle and the poison pill. He took a deep breath and took out the jade box. He had placed it in his bag of holding much earlier. In reality, the medicinal pill really was one of the 3 ancient medicinal pills, the primordial heavenly replenishment pill. It was only half of the original pill, therefore, the essence of time and the medicinal strength within the pill hadn't completely vanished. In ancient times, pills were not concocted using flames. Instead, the power of heaven and earth was used. The jade box was actually the final step of the concoction process. After being sealed inside, the pill would gradually become complete. This was common knowledge. Almost all ancient medicinal pills that had been discovered were like this. Despite being sealed in the jade box, the passage of so much time caused most such ancient medicinal pills to gradually dry out and become defective, although they generally contained a bit of medicinal strength. Meng Hao had no idea how long this primordial heavenly replenishment pill had existed, but for some reason it hadn't dried out and had contained the full level of medicinal strength. Furthermore, the pill contained the power of time. If Meng Hao had not mastered the technique to refine time, achieved enlightenment regarding the violet will incantation, and refined a spring and autumn tree, then it would have been very difficult to spot the uniqueness of this medicinal pill. All three were essential. If one were missing, he wouldn't have been able to pick up on the clues. Time was both visible and corporeal, yet at the same time invisible and incorporeal. Ancient medicinal pills will dry out and reveal their ancientness. This was a result of their passage through time. However, this medicinal pill was different. It sucked in time, filling the pill with its illusory power. This pill was actually a time treasure. Because of that, when consumed, the pill would reverse the qi and blood passageways, and immediately cause the body to begin to wither and age. However, after that, when the pill was fully dissolved, then the true power of the primordial heavenly replenishment pill would explode out. That is exactly what had happened with Xianxia. The so-called medicinal pill that Meng Hao had concocted was a ruse to cover up the truth. The only function it had served was to smear over the evidence of the primordial heavenly replenishment pill in Xianxia's body. Meng Hao's true goal had been to first prevent Patriarch Violet Civ and the others from picking up on any of the clues, and next connive his way into getting the pill for himself. Meng Hao took a deep breath as he extracted the globule of blood from within the pill furnace and placed it into a jade bottle. Next, he put the primordial heavenly replenishing pill into the oven and began to clean the filth off of it. Then, he gingerly placed it back into its original jade box, which he then held up to examine. The true value of this pill to me is not its medicinal strength, but the fact that encased within it is the power of time. When it comes time for me to forge my treasure of time, I will be able to learn a lot from it. It will increase my chances of success by quite a bit. Meng Hao was itching with anticipation. He could only imagine the power that he would be able to wield after producing his own treasure of time. It's too bad that Xianxia will obviously never tell me where he got this medicinal pill. However, I should know soon enough. He lifted up the jade bottle inside of where he had placed the globule of blood. This blood was from Xianxia. Once I'm able to produce a blood clone, the clone should be able to use its power to see the memories of whosever blood it was created from. Meng Hao's mind filled with excitement. As for Xianxia, he had chosen to fight with Meng Hao in terms of alchemy. His cultivation base hadn't been irreparably destroyed, and furthermore they were in the middle of the Black Civ sect, and the victory had been made openly and fairly. Therefore, there were no negative repercussions. A few days passed by in a flash. The World Pill Division left, leaving the Black Civ sect alchemy training fully in the hands of Meng Hao and Jade. Patriarch Violet Civ personally requested that Meng Hao concoct some soul-refining pills for the Black Civ sect. Such pills were nourishing to the soul. Meng Hao decided to politely decline. He didn't want to have to work in such close contact with the Black Civ sect. As for Jade, he seemed excited with the current situation. He had been giving lectures throughout the Black Civ sect and was feeling quite content with everything. Meng Hao spent his time visiting the sites in the sect and paying respects to some of the conclave disciples. He tried in a roundabout way to get information about Su Qing. After 5 days passed, he still hadn't seen a trace of her. As of now, he was starting to get worried. The Black Civ sect was a bizarre place. The incident with Zhou Jai had solidified this fact in his mind. On this particular evening, Meng Hao was walking along in an area near the edge of the 100 mountains. He lifted his head up and saw a woman standing atop one of the mountains off in the distance. She wore a black robe and stood upon a stone pillar which jutted up from the mountain. The wind caused her garment as well as her long black hair to flutter about her. The instant Meng Hao saw her face, his mind trembled. This woman was beautiful but cold and cheerless. He had been searching for her everywhere, and then suddenly here she was, floating in the wind. Her expression was one of blankness. She stood on the stone pillar, looking like she wanted to float away. This was Su Qing. Chapter 256, Bottom Line. Her blank eyes made it seem as if her soul had fled, as if her spirit was injured. Her pale skin showed no trace of blood, like a corpse entombed in ice for 1,000 years. The wind blowing across the pillar couldn't dispel her confusion. Her garments were stained with blackened spots of dried blood that seemed to have been there for a very, very long time. Never having been washed away, they had dried and branded themselves onto the fabric. On her forehead was a wound, a gash that had clearly been there for some indeterminable length of time. It looked like a sword wound that hadn't healed. As her garments fluttered in the wind, her right wrist became visible. It had a second sword gash on it. Su Qing was thinner, even colder than before. She looked as if she'd emerged from a frigid snowstorm. Her garment was blue, her long hair draped like a cloak. Her skin was so delicate a breeze might pierce it. Meng Hao stared at her beauty, unwilling to blink. If he blinked, everything would darken, and he'd lose sight of her beautiful figure. He saw the sword wounds, her blank look, her damaged blood vessels. In that moment, the entire world disappeared except Su Qing, standing on the mountain peak in the wind. Meng Hao felt a twinge of pain in his heart. He could ignore Han Bei's secret and Zhou Jai's bizarre behavior. The demon sealing Jade had spoken twice, but neither Han Bei nor Zhou Jai seemed his concern. Their fates, their situations, were things he didn't want to involve himself in. After all, the root of all this was the Black Civ sect itself. Meng Hao had grown up as a scholar and was innately intelligent and farsighted. How could he not understand the meaning of the words of the demon sealing Jade? It was especially obvious considering the divine ability Zhou Jai had used at the end of their battle that year, and the discarnate souls which had appeared. How could he not understand? What had happened to Han Bei and Zhou Jai? And how could he not understand the terrifying power of the Black Civ sect? He did understand. In fact, he knew that the Black Civ sect's forces were much greater than the people who walked about on the surface of the land. Discarnate souls possess the body, he thought to himself. The discarnate souls are like those which appeared along with Zhou Jai's divine ability that year, cultivators who have long since died. It seems countless discarnate souls exist underneath all of the 100,000 mountains of the Black Civ sect. This Black Civ sect is a sect of the underworld. Returned from the afterlife, desiring to rejoin the world of men, possessing the bodies of cultivators and living parasitic lives. Zhou Jai exists in this very state, his body having been possessed. He is incapable of recovering his own mental faculties and should not have been able to seek out death as he did that day. Clearly, something unexpected had occurred after his possession. Because of that unexpected event, the discarnate soul that had possessed him was injured, which allowed his own soul to reawaken. That was what had caused his confusion, his madness, and his struggle. As for Han Bei, there is clearly nothing wrong with her. However, she wants outsiders to think that her body has been successfully possessed. This is because there are not two souls within her but three. One is her own, one is a discarnate soul from the Black Civ sect, and the third is the Han clan patriarch which emerged from the statue in the Black Civ sect's blessed land and then entered her body. How could Meng Hao not understand these things? Because he understood he didn't want to get sucked in, but as time passed without finding Su Qing, he grew nervous. Finally today he was able to see her. And now he understood that he could not ignore this. Su Qing's soul possession was a line Meng Hao couldn't cross. He took a deep breath and strode forward toward the mountain peak. His body transformed into a prismatic beam. In an instant he'd arrived behind Su Qing's pillar. He looked at her back and was about to approach her when she turned. Her cold features were no longer filled with a blank look. Instead, a grim expression appeared. In that moment, a sense of impending crisis welled up from the bottom of Meng Hao's heart. As he looked at Su Qing, he couldn't see a foundation establishment cultivation base anymore. Instead, everything was blurry. Meng Hao's expression did not change. He looked at her, and at the same time surreptitiously performed an incantation gesture with his right hand. Within his mind floated the 8th demon sealing hex. Because of the way he had performed the incantation, the hex changed. It floated about in his mind and stayed there, not moving out even the tiniest bit. However, as soon as the 8th demon sealing hex appeared in his mind, his eyes, though they didn't look any different, now viewed the world in a completely different way. The mountains were still green, the land below was the same land as before, but the greenness of the 100,000 mountains was now covered with a black aura. This black aura roiled up from all the mountains to circulate about in the air. In this moment, it looked to Meng Hao as if the Black Civ sect really had become a sect of the underworld. Strands of black aura drifted up off of Su Qing's body and swirled around her. Its nucleus seemed to be in the pit of her stomach, where a flickering globule of black mist existed. Deep within that black mist, Meng Hao could see Su Qing's soul, sleeping, as if it had been sealed. The black aura emanated out constantly, and in fact, behind Su Qing, it congealed together to form into the blurry image of a woman. The phantom figure emanated a seemingly endless ghastly aura. It was bizarre, and emitted thick an aura of death as it looked at Meng Hao along with Su Qing. "Who are you?" said Su Qing, her voice unhurried. From Meng Hao's perspective, this voice did not belong to Su Qing, but rather the gruesome discarnate soul which floated behind her. As her words drifted out, Meng Hao suddenly sensed that the surrounding black aura was rushing toward them. It swirled around, forming into countless faces that grinned hideously as they stared at Meng Hao. Of course, they were unaware that Meng Hao could see them as they floated around. I'm Fang Mu of the Violet Fate Sect, Meng Hao replied with a smile. Elder sister, are you a conclave disciple of the Black Civ Sect? I've been here for a few days, but this is my first time seeing you. As he clasped hands and bowed, he allowed the eighth demon sealing hex to dissipate, and the world around him returned to normal. Oh, so you're Grandmaster Fang, Su Qing said coolly. This is a prohibited mountain, please leave immediately. She turned, ignoring Meng Hao and staring off into the distance. A blank look once again filled her face. His expression the same as usual, Meng Hao bowed again and then turned into a beam of light that shot away from the mountain. He took his time going back, enjoying the sights along the way. By the time he got back to Black Welcoming Peak, the moon hung high in the sky. He entered the building and immediately settled himself in the protective shield of the Furnace Lord Medallion. His face instantly grew grim. He had been extremely cautious on his way back, careful to make sure nothing at all seemed amiss about him. However, there were still some discarnate souls who followed him. They had swirled around him the entire way, finally disappearing when he arrived at Black Welcoming Peak. To save Su Qing, I have to get close to her, he thought. Furthermore, I can't let anyone find out about it. This Black Civ sect is obviously an underworld sect, with discarnate souls flying around everywhere. Had he made an open move just now, not only would he have been unable to save Su Qing, but he would also have broken his own cover. He sat thinking, his eyes flickering. After some time passed, he closed his eyes. Early the next morning, his eyes snapped open. He lifted up a jade slip, branded it with some information, then flicked his sleeve to send it flying out of the building. His cool voice echoed out. I have a matter to discuss with Patriarch Violet Civ regarding pill concoction. As soon as the jade slip flew out into the air, a cultivator appeared out of nowhere to grab it. It was impossible to determine his cultivation base, but he wore a black robe. He immediately disappeared off into the distance. Inwardly, Meng Hao gave a cold laugh. Ever since his alchemic showdown with Chen Jiaxi, he had sensed an aura outside of the Black Welcoming Mountains. Obviously someone was there watching him. A few moments later, laughter could be heard, followed by Patriarch Violet Civ, who had come in person to discuss things with Fang Mu. He stood there with a smile on his face, clasping hands and bowing to Meng Hao. Grandmaster Fang, he said with a smile, please don't take offense. I arranged for a disciple to stand watch outside to ensure your safety. After all, our sect is a complicated place, and I'm incapable of controlling everything. According to the information in this jade slip, you say you can concoct the soul refining pill. Well. Meng Hao sighed and then in an embarrassed voice said, Elder Violet Civ, actually, I've never heard of the soul refining pill. Considering that, along with its strange name, it obviously has something to do with souls. I fear that the concocting such a pill would be extremely difficult. With so many variations, it would be very draining. That is why I hesitated to agree. Patriarch Violet Civ didn't reply. Instead, he stood there waiting for Meng Hao to continue, which he did. Any other ordinary medicinal pill would be simple, but for strange new pills, even if I wanted to concoct them, I'm worried that it would really be too draining. Furthermore, I don't really have the appropriate pill furnace. He gave a wry smile and looked even more embarrassed. Also, I don't think I really have enough of the medicinal plants that would be required. And I'm sure that the medicinal plants required are very valuable. Of course, I'm actually happy to help out, sir. I don't mind getting tired. However, what I'm more worried about would be the wasted time. Furthermore, I don't want to bother anyone during the concoction process, which will require 100% concentration on my part. Patriarch Violet Civ frowned for a moment, then suddenly laughed. I understand, Grandmaster Fang. I can provide all of the medicinal plants you need. Even if you aren't able to concoct the pills in the end, it won't matter. Furthermore, I have the authority to provide you with some spirit stones as a way of thanking you for your work. As for a pill furnace, the Black Civ Sect's treasure storehouse happens to have a 10,000 refinements furnace. We can gift this treasured furnace to you, Grandmaster. In addition, I can guarantee that no one will disturb you during your pill concocting. It will be just the same as if we sealed Black Welcoming Peak. Meng Hao's eyes glittered, but his expression was one of shyness, as if he was still embarrassed. Sir, I am here at the Black Civ sect as representative of my own sect. How could I possibly lay claim to treasured items of your honored sect? As soon as Patriarch Violet Civ saw his expression, he smiled and raised his hand to cut off Meng Hao. Chapter 257, Soul Refining. Meng Hao hesitated, but then seemed to decide. Sir, he said resolute, since you place such faith in me then, I will do the concocting. I will use everything I've learned to concoct the soul refining pill for your sect. As for your kindness, it will be engraved on my mind forever. However, I can't do a bulk concoction. That would simplify things but reduce medicinal strength and effectiveness. Each soul has slight differences. If I adjust each pill to those differences, I can achieve maximum medicinal strength. Patriarch Violet Civ looked at Meng Hao thoughtfully. From the moment Fang Mu entered the sect, he'd noticed nothing amiss. His background, identity, skill in the Tao of alchemy, nothing raised suspicion. He'd been skeptical about the primordial heavenly replenishing pill, but couldn't find evidence of wrongdoing. The soul-refining pills were of extreme importance to the sect. However, the Black Civ sect's alchemists were incapable of concocting them. Only the East Pill Division and World Pill Division were skilled enough with souls. With the World Pill Division gone and Fang Mu so prominent, Patriarch Violet Civ nodded without hesitation. There are 13 conclave disciples in the Black Civ sect who, because they cultivate a special type of divine ability, ended up injuring their souls. The symptoms are dementia and hallucinations, as you saw that day with Zhou Jai. AI, Patriarch Violet Civ sighed, and then stared solemnly at Meng Hao. We can rely only on you, Grandmaster Fang, to concoct the pills we need. I will arrange for the 13 conclave disciples to be sent here one at a time for you to examine and concoct pills for. When he finished speaking, Patriarch Violet Sect turned to leave. Meng Hao clasped hands and bowed as he did so. A bag of holding was delivered to Meng Hao. Inside were spirit stones, roughly 100,000. His heart pounded. There was also a vast collection of medicinal plants and the soul-refining pill formula. Last was a pill furnace. When he took it out, his eyes shone. The furnace was pure white, jade-like yet not. No carvings adorned its surface, and it had an unusual shape. No medicinal aroma wafted from it. Instead, strands of white qi circulated inside. 10,000 refinements furnace, murmured Meng Hao, palpitating with eagerness. Back in the East Pill Division, he had studied a jade slip with introductions to all the various types of pill furnaces. There was one type which, after having successfully concocted 10,000 batches of medicinal pills, would gain sentience because of all of the nourishment it had received from the qi of the medicinal pills. Such a furnace would have been constructed from incredible materials to begin with. After the 10,000 concoctions, it would become even more incredible. Such pill furnaces were rarely seen in the world. Generally speaking, pill furnaces are viewed as consumable items and will explode after 100 uses or so. For a pill furnace to survive for 10,000 batches placed its value at an incredible level. Meng Hao took a deep breath and then swirled his hand about inside of the furnace, grasping one of the strands of qi and pulled it out to examine. After a moment, he sighed, sounding somewhat regretful. It seemed this pill furnace had been used to concoct 10,000 of the exact same type of medicinal pill. In this case, it couldn't quite measure up to some of the other of this type of furnace, which had been used to concoct countless different types of medicinal pills. However, as far as Meng Hao was concerned, this furnace far exceeded his blood crane furnace. Putting away the 10,000 refinements furnace, Meng Hao stood and then looked outside. A group of dozens of Black Civ sect disciples had surrounded the mountain and were now sitting cross-legged in meditation. Bluish light flickered around them. Clearly, once Meng Hao began his concocting, they would employ the full power of the light to create a shield around the mountain, ensuring that he wouldn't be disturbed. Meng Hao muttered to himself for a moment, then decided to prepare for any emergencies which might arise. He lifted his Furnace Lord medallion, then branded it with some information. It immediately flickered. Moments later, Zhou Dekun flew toward him in a beam of colorful light. Having received Meng Hao's transmitted message, he ended his alchemy lecture and immediately came to Black Welcoming Peak. Sensing the dozens of Black Civ sect disciples meditating in the area, he felt a bit of surprise. Meng Hao went out to meet him and explained the situation. Furthermore, he asked Zhou Dekun to stay behind as Dharma protector and to act as his assistant. Some time ago, Zhou Dekun would surely have refused. However, his attitude toward Meng Hao had completely changed recently. Hearing all the information, he nodded solemnly and pulled out his Furnace Lord medallion. Meng Hao felt much more reassured now and handed over the bag of holding with all the medicinal plants. With the protection of 2 Furnace Lord medallions, no matter what the Black Civ sect did, he would have temporary protection from any sort of divine sense. As far as the discarnate souls went, Meng Hao had some methods that would prevent them from noticing anything untoward. In any case, he did not plan to do anything too noticeable. In this whole matter, caution would be of the utmost importance. Not much time passed before two cultivators appeared, carrying between them a young man in a blue robe as they hurried over. When they arrived, Meng Hao and Zhou Decan both took a close look at the young man, and then frowned. His face was pale white, seemingly without any trace of blood. His eyes were vacant and blank, and his body was emaciated, his skin so thin that you could see the bones sticking out from within. It was obvious that his qi passageways were not even moving. He was almost like a mortal. One of the middle-aged men supporting him said, "This is conclave disciple Huang Zhangxi. While cultivating a secret magic, the technique backfired, weakening both his body and soul. If the sect elders didn't maintain his life with magical power, he would have long since died." The man sighed, and then bowed deeply to Meng Hao. "Muscle atrophy and a weakened body," said Zhou Decan, his voice soft. "The soul is spilling out and the mind is dying. This man." Meng Hao looked closely at the young man, who clearly seemed to have lost his spirit. After a long moment, he approached the young man and placed his fingers onto his neck. He muttered to himself for a moment, then moved his hand to grasp the young man's arm, after which he closely inspected the faint blue veins visible in his skin. "First we will concoct a spirit-fusing pill to see how much damage has been inflicted on his mind. Elder brother Zhou, what do you think?" Meng Hao looked over at Zhou Decan, who nodded. "3 yellows grass, 7 souls spice, 100 years flower." Meng Hao slowly listed out several dozen kinds of medicinal plants. Zhou Decan recognized many of these plants as being very rare. All were related to recovering mental faculties. He quickly retrieved the medicinal plants from the bag of holding provided by the Black Civ sect and began to catalyze and prepare them according to Meng Hao's direction. Meng Hao pulled out the 10,000 refinements furnace. When he saw it, Zhou Decan's eyes went wide. However, he knew that now was not the time to ask about it, and suddenly understood why Meng Hao attached such importance to this job. After placing the various medicinal plants into the pill furnace, Meng Hao performed a catalyzing incantation with his left hand, and then pressed a finger from his right hand directly into the forehead of the young man, opening up a small wound and retrieving a drop of blood. The drop of blood floated in front of Meng Hao for a moment, and then flew into the pill furnace. A few moments later, a black-colored medicinal pill appeared. With the flick of a sleeve, Meng Hao sent it into the mouth of the young man. About 10 breaths passed, and then suddenly, the young man's body began to tremble. He let out a miserable howl, which caused the faces of the two middle-aged cultivators to flicker. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever, completely calm. The blood-curdling screaming lasted for the time it takes half an incense stick to burn, after which a black qi began to emanate out from the top of the young man's head. Within the black qi was also a white-colored mist. The two seemed to be fused together. However, neither seemed to be able to make use of the other and were attempting to disperse. However, it was as if some power were preventing them from separating. The more they fused together, the more they attempted to separate. From the look of it, they would only be able to stay fused together for a limited time before completely separating. I'm not sure what technique this person cultivated, but it caused death qi to enter his body, which then began to consume his life force. It was suppressed, but that will not last forever. Unless something is done to save him, he will definitely die within 3 months. "I Fang Mu can attempt to save him," said Meng Hao coolly. "I'm 50% confident that I can succeed. However, his blood vessels are already in ruin. I need 3 generations of blood from his ancestors to create a blood vessel pill. With that, I can reconstruct his blood vessels and afterward give birth to a new soul for him. Souls are birthed from the blood, so after this has been accomplished, I can concoct the soul refining pill. At that point, success should be assured." Hearing this, one of the middle-aged cultivators supporting the young man turned and left. After the time it takes 2 incense sticks to burn, he returned and handed 3 jade bottles to Meng Hao. Inside were 3 generations of blood from the young man's ancestors. In addition to the requisite latent talent, most conclave disciples had ancestors who attained high positions within the sect. As such, acquiring 3 generations of blood was not difficult. Meng Hao indicated for the Black Civ sect cultivators to take the possessed young man inside the residence. Then he asked them to leave and produced his furnace lord medallion. Zhou Decan did the same, and immediately the glowing shield appeared to lock down the area. Outside, another shield appeared to cover Black Welcoming Mountain. Everything was sealed down. The only people in the building now were Meng Hao, Zhou Decan, and the pale-faced young man with the lost mind. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever as he looked thoughtfully at the young man. This person has been possessed by a discarnate soul evading the reincarnation cycle of heaven and earth. After possession, if the body does not contain its original soul, it will become like a walking corpse. Without the ability to sustain itself, the body will begin to decay in a matter of days. Therefore, the discarnate soul is incapable of consuming the body's original soul. Instead, it must exist as a parasite that controls the body. Originally, there was balance, but due to some unexpected circumstances, the balance was broken. Thus, the current situation arose. A barely detectable glitter appeared in Meng Hao's eyes. The discarnate soul is already damaged. The thing to do is to transform yin into yang, turn misfortune into the opposite. As the demon sealing Jade said, either seal it so that it cannot see the summer sun, or assist it with the blood will of the demon sealer. Meng Hao's eyes shone with a cold light. He wasn't sure if the soul-refining pill would have any effect, but what he did know was that the will contained within his blood was the only hope the young man had of living, either now or in the future. This chapter was sponsored by Nadav Ben Yehuda, Christopher Choi, Jaishan Chen, Rudolph Areola, and Sunny Gola.